All right. We're live.
Hello.
How you doing today, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm stoked.
I am extremely stoked. We've been talking about this for over a year now. We have booze and cigars, and could it get any better from here?
No, we do have water, though, for sobering, so that's good.
Yes. We'll save that for the end.
Yes.
Yeah. You got to drive home still.
Yes. So, yeah, been wanting to do this for a while with you, and we're going to have you still on our program as well, so it'll be a lot of fun.
How's that going, by the way?
My program?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is slightly strange.
What?
This podcast.
What? Which one?
This one.
Yours?
This interview. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's strange.
Two worlds coming together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, my program's doing good. We're like in the top 3% of religious podcasts now, and so that's fun.
I love that you say that as you literally hold a cigar and a glass of whiskey sitting in front of you.
Don't at me, bro. So, well, hey, I mean, I am very devout, but I also am not stupid, crazy, legalistically strict either. I think people blow things out of proportion, but that's probably going to be part of this conversation.
I feel like a lot of Christianity is kind of going that way, where people are starting to come full circle around, where they realize that being that strict is almost unnecessary.
Not just unnecessary, it's detrimental. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. Oh, I'll probably get some flack from somebody, I'm sure, but it's the internet.
Who are you going to get flack from?
I don't know. Internet people.
The trolls?
Probably. I don't know. I try not to give them too much, pay them too much mind, because everyone's got an opinion on the internet. Doesn't mean it's a good one.
Bro, you have a big opinion on the internet.
I have lots of opinions.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to hear about it. Oh, shoot. So, yeah, I guess real quick, my name is Will. I'm with the Church Split, hence the t-shirt. We are both a ministry and a podcast focused on theology, cultural issues, and what's called apologetics, which is, in short, defending Christianity. And so we are controversial, hence the church split, because some churches split over dumb things, and our whole thing is maybe Christians, instead of splitting and screaming like a bunch of little whiny snowflakes, we actually try to engage in some intellectual discourse, have a little bit of thicker skin, and we actually have normal conversations like adults instead of running away thinking everyone's the devil. And so you can imagine that either makes us extremely popular or extremely unpopular, depending on who you ask.
I that's one thing I've noticed in a lot of different realms, whether it's the religious realm or just even the political realm, or even just like normal realms, like the normal day-to-day realm, like this podcast, for instance. Like, if you don't tote the line and you don't say what people want you to say, then you're the devil, and you're now in the center of their target.
Right. Absolutely. Suddenly, if you disagree, you are the problem with society. You can't have a normal conversation on just, okay, like one of the things I get accused of regularly is, Will, you always have to be right. Like, why do you always want to be right? I'm like, well, do you want to be wrong? Well, no, I don't want to be wrong. Well, you always want to be right then. And they're like, see, there it is again. I'm like, or we can just say, how about we argue this out, which isn't always bad, and we figure out who is right, and maybe we find out we're both wrong. That's okay. Again,
Do you ever admit that you're wrong?
I do admit that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I hate it when
Have
I'm
you
wrong.
publicly done it?
Yes, I have. Which is actually multiple.
Does it hurt?
It stings. No, it's actually one of the things where it's like, I'll study a topic, like I'm completely convinced on a particular topic. I come to that topic, and then I study it out. I'm like, crap, I've been so wrong.
What is an example of that? What's one thing that you've been wrong on, and you study and you realize, dang it.
Oh, let's see. That's a number of topics. So in the theological world, I just finished this morning. I finished a series that I've been teaching through on the atonement, which is essentially the idea of how in the world does Jesus reconcile us to God? Because Protestants have taught for ages that, well, really what it was, that God's very angry. He has to pour his wrath out on his son, and then he has to satisfy his wrath and his justice in order to bring you back unto him. And you go, and the whole idea is, I'm wrong, I'm the sinner. And Jesus goes, no, judge, perfect judge God, I will take his place. And we go, wow, that's so beautiful. He took my place. But then you think about it, if God is perfect, holy, and righteous, does that make him a good judge? If he's like, yeah, the innocent, you'll do. Let me just kill you. That's fine. It doesn't really hold up. And that's what's called penal substitutionary atonement. I have changed my perspective on it to what's called Christus Victor, which is essentially the idea that when we sinned, the whole world fell into the condemnation of the devil. Essentially, he runs it all. And that when Jesus lived a perfect life, he destroyed sin because he lived perfectly. When he died, he became consumed in death, but then resurrected, destroying the power of sin and death over the creation, and also ransoming us from the devil back unto God. So instead of God pouring his wrath out on his son, is really his son helping to redeem mankind away from that which is besetting us. That is one area I was wrong, and I taught that for a long time, the wrong way, about almost 10 years. So it's fine. It's fine. But I just finished like a 9-part series. You can find it on the Church Split channel if you're really interested in hearing all about it. But that's just one many things that I've been wrong on. Also, if you ask my wife, she will tell you all the other ways I've been wrong. So... Oh shoot.
So where did the church split come from? I mean, obviously it's a pretty niche name for a podcast. I mean, obviously it's something that catches attention, the church split. Church splits typically happen when something in the church happens.
Right.
Like, and the church divides.
Right.
Did you experience anything like that?
Oh.
Is that...
My goodness. I'm not sure if we're ready to open that can of worms yet. Yeah.
Do we not want to get into that part yet? Do you want to wait?
No, yeah. We should probably, we probably should. First off, I don't think we've even said who we are yet.
Do we need to?
I don't know. I don't know how you're going to thumbnail this, but I'm literally your brother.
You are my brother.
Yeah, like not figuratively, literally, but also figuratively because of adoption.
Yes, we're adopted. But if you ask everybody from our childhood, they're like, yeah, you guys look alike.
That was my favorite. Oh my gosh, there's so many times with that where I was like...
We can totally see it.
Yeah, we're like, oh no, it's my brother David. They're like, we had to show our IDs.
Yeah, we had to prove it.
Well, all right, here's our driver's licenses. Oh yeah, wow, you're both Hesses. I'm like, yeah, it's almost like he's my brother. And then other people would be like, oh, he's my brother. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, I see the resemblance. We're like... No, you don't.
No, you don't. you were dumb. You were so dumb.
No, like literally. Who would look at us and be like, yeah, that like Hispanic looking guy and that like white German boy definitely related. So no, that was one of the fun parts. So yeah, I did. Now, as far as the church split was concerned, I can give you the brevity version. So the brief version, basically it was started because I was a pastor. And then over time, the church, is filled with a lot of very intense people who have followed tradition more than they follow anything worth critical thought or anything like that.
Are you talking about like a certain kind of, religion, like a fundamental?
Yeah, fundamentalists. But I mean, this happens in a lot of circles. I mean, I'm in West Michigan, so we have a huge Reformed presence, like Christian Reformed.
Yeah.
So the Reformed have their own tradition, and they will not deviate from it. They cannot see past the 3 inches in front of their face of their own systematic theology. Like, this is the way I see it. This is why I view all things. Where, and that's how everyone does it. Like, they're comfortable. It's right. Yeah. It's really comfortable just to say, nope, I got it figured out. This is what I believe.
This episode is brought to you by Red Bike Delivery. This delivery service operates only using battery-powered, eco-friendly transportation. Red Bike Delivery is there for all your delivery needs, whether it's dinner for the family, flowers for your partner, or new houseplants for your new collection. Red Bike Delivery will gladly deliver those and everything in between. So what are you waiting for? Check out Red Bike Delivery on Facebook or Instagram for more information. Red Bike Delivery, because there's only one Earth.
Tradition I follow, we're good. So what ends up happening is that a lot of people they have a lot of preferences and opinions, and they don't challenge those. And a lot of times there's a lot of power grabs in politics and churches, which it shouldn't be, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So I experienced that, and long story short, the church split, and it was very vicious. My mother-in-law was dying. My wife was gone, nursing her mother to her deathbed, while I had people basically saying I'm Satan and they hate me, and we're going to take our tithe elsewhere. This place won't operate without us. And it's like, and I just remember going through that and being extremely frustrated, feeling very alone, and being like, but still like at the same time, you know how stubborn I am. I'm like, well, no, I'm going to make it work. And I did. So essentially we were at a Taco Bell one night, glorious Taco Bell. If you've never been to Taco Bell like 10 p.m., you've never had a spiritual experience. And we're sitting there all talking.
I had one in like 2 a.m. after eating Taco Bell.
See? And then, so we end up we're sitting there, and one of my friends, Tabby, I'd mentioned I wanted to start like a podcast or a show discussing theology and issues within the church critically, so that way we can be better. And I was like, I don't know what I'd call it though. And I was kicking around different names. I was having a hard time. And then Tabby, in her great troll glory, goes, "You should just call it the church split, since that's all you do is split churches and make people mad." And I was like, wait, hold on, what'd you say? That works. And now here I am, got the shirt, got the logos, the whole 9 yards. It's and I've been doing it now for 3-4 years with my co-host Brian Bodie. It's been a lot of fun.
Did Brian start the podcast with you?
Yeah, but he was behind the scenes. He did. Brian's very introverted.
Yeah.
So he did not want to be in front of the camera at all, which is funny because I slowly brought him in, and then I made him my I was like, dude, you should just be my co-host. Everyone loves it when we get such good feedback when you're on. When it's not just me monologuing, when it's an interaction.
Yeah.
And now he's there, and now he's got his own catchphrases that everyone loves, and now he's part of it, and I won. That's the long story short.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I follow your stuff on almost every platform, but like it's amazing to me how active and like how active you are with all your listeners on Facebook and on social media. I mean, you're constantly going back and forth with people.
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand how you guys have time for that.
Well, it helps that I work at a computer. So all day, every day, I work on a computer. So while I'm at work 9 to 12 hours a day, I can also quickly check in on an email or something along that nature, where I can just check in on the discourse, the discussions. I also teach classes through it just to help people out. And I regularly say I'm not an expert in everything. Like, I don't know everything, obviously, but there's certain things I have studied out and know very well, and things I don't know, I'm usually more like, this is my understanding, but is there someone else here who knows this topic better than me? Because it's very humbling. So here's the thing, David, you and I have always been very opinionated people.
Me? No. No.
Yeah, so we've always been very opinionated, and you're lying, but we've always been opinionated. And one of the things I realized, so there was a thing, people who know me have heard me tell this story. There was one time I engaged with somebody. It was actually I think the pastor of the Bacon family. Back in the HSMA and all that stuff. Back
Homeschool Music Association or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting them on blast right now.
I got engaged. Well, no, not them. They're lovely. I have no issues with them. But I got engaged with their pastor. And for lack of a better term, he killed me. He crushed me in a theological debate. And I didn't like that. I was in seminary, and I was like, I know he's wrong, but I have no idea how to prove that. You know what I mean? Like, it's that moment where you just feel like you just got punched in the face and you had no good, strong rebuttal.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the moment where I was like, if I'm going to do this, I should probably take this a bit more seriously and understand a bit more. And that was when the studies began. I was probably about 21, which is weird because I'm in seminary and I still am ignorant because our seminaries, most of them are trash. Not all, but most. I'm actually part of a great seminary right now, and it's all reading and writing. It's all it is, because it's like, no, we don't want to tell you what to think by making fill in blanks, do this stuff, and follow creeds and stuff. We want you to interact with the material and write on it.
Yeah,
and that was a big deal for me. So, but anyway, that's the short version of the church split of what we are and how we began. So
that's interesting. That one thing with the podcast, like for me, it's become like a second job. It's something that I like pour literally all my like heart and soul and extra time and everything into.
Yep. Sounds about right. It is. I say it all the time. It's like a part-time job, and it's
almost like a full-time job.
Yeah, seriously, because
maybe part-time for you because you have a co-host, but
yeah, my co-host helps me with the back. So it's funny how it works. Usually, I'm the one getting like the interview set up, the questions, the outlines, and he's the one doing all the digital stuff. So we balance each other out quite a bit, where it helps us both. We're very busy to be able to breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know how you do it, so congratulations.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
I'm actually thinking about taking a step back a little bit.
You probably should.
Yeah. No, I put so many out that it's almost impossible to spend my free time with my kids and my wife and just house things. And,
right. Well, I mean, and that's kind of what we ran into. We were doing a weekly show, and as fun as it was, and we were gaining a lot of growth from it, it was just one of those things where we started realizing that our families were suffering for it.
Yeah.
We weren't, a lot of things were being neglected in our lives because of it. And even though we loved what we do, I'm like, dude, I have a full-time job, a very demanding full-time job. And I'm like, I need to start focusing on that and my family a bit more. So now we changed it to about an every other week schedule, and that's been a lot more digestible.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
So do you guys interview people, right?
All the time.
So if somebody wanted to come on your show to debate you guys or anything like that, can they just, is there a sign up? Can they just sign up?
Can they sign up? Oh, where do I want to get my face kicked? No, if they want to have a discussion or whatever, I mean, if they email us at thechurchsplit@gmail.com, they could easily just find us there. And if it's something that's intriguing or something that we don't know much about, we could easily host you on that. So we've been more than happy to, if someone disagrees with us, have a conversation, or especially if you know an expert in any particular theological or historical field that deals with like ancient Near Eastern languages or ancient Near Eastern culture, we would love to have a conversation with you.
Awesome.
So
Cool.
Anyway, but I mean, you and I are brothers.
We go way back.
We go way back.
Way back.
Way back.
Not super far back, but
the dawn of time.
the dawn of time.
So the way this, I don't know, like I don't even know where to begin.
I don't either.
With all this.
I've always imagined how we would share our stories together on a podcast. Like, how would we do that? Because like our story, our stories like join together. We have a lot of the same experiences, but from different perspectives, obviously.
Right. Well, because we're different people.
No, really?
What?
Are we? But it was almost kind of like we were the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would like literally like make certain noises and we'd be like, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. We had a way of just like looking at each other's eyes and we're just like, yeah, I know what you're
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, it was one of those things where, so for us, I mean, you already told your story on the program. It was like your first episode, wasn't it? You're like, all right.
Second episode.
You're like, all right, here it is. Here's what everything that's happened to me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've appreciated, and I'll have to say this on here, it's one of the things I've appreciated about you and a lot of people like you is the fact that you've been through it all. You've been through a bunch of crap. And yet I don't see you every day sulking about it, continually saying, like, I call it perpetuating victim culture.
Yeah.
Which is, I've been through crap and now I just want to keep talking about my crap and that's all I want to talk about. And anyone who tells me I need to do better in my life is wrong because I've been through crap.
Yeah.
Which is basically using your negative experiences as an excuse to be a crappier person. Right. Yeah. And it's a real problem for me. And I think it's a problem for you as well.
It's a huge problem for me because, I mean, if you really want to find a reason to let something affect you, you can. It's easy. But at some point, you have to learn to let go and you have to move on. Mm-hmm. Because if you want the rest of your life to be better, if you want to have a good relationship with your wife or your husband or even your kids, or you want to be a good parent, you got to let go of that stuff.
Yeah, you got to detox that and go to therapy, do whatever it takes, but get over it. Yeah. And people a lot of times get mad at me and they're like, "Oh, you can't just say get over it." I'm like, I'm not saying you just
can't tell victims that.
Yeah.
Which, I get that it takes people time to get over things, and I understand that there's a process to it. Mm-hmm. However, to expect other people to not talk about it or expect other people to be okay with you being a victim and you're not doing anything about it, that's a problem.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where it's like, even all that therapy, all that processing, what is that for if not to get over it?
Right.
You're trying to get over it.
Yeah.
Right. Your trauma.
Well, there's some sort of attention that's attached to it. Right. Well, if you say, well, I was raped, you shouldn't say that because I was raped.
Right.
Or you shouldn't have somebody. Never mind.
You're like, I don't want to get canceled just yet. It's okay. They've already tried to cancel me multiple times. It's fun.
I've had two cancellations so far.
So yeah, see, there it is. It's a lot of fun. We've had multiple cancellations. We either get the crazy Christian cancellations or we get the crazy progressive Christians over here that are like way over on the left. Sorry if you're listening to this and you're more on the left, but I'm just saying there's some of y'all that need to stop trying to eat people alive.
One thing I realized, especially having a podcast, is that people only care about you as long as you're not toting that line. If you're toting that line, then they care. And so like with this podcast, I've interviewed over 100 people now. And I've had a lot of people on here that share their stories. I've had a couple politicians, but not many, like maybe 3. But most of the time, like I don't get that massive of feedback.
Right.
Like people don't care. Like, oh, he's doing cool things. Like he's interviewing people, they're sharing their stories, whatever. But then you interview a politician and somebody who happens to be controversial, somebody who happens to be on the right, who doesn't tote the line, somebody who is controversial. And then all of a sudden you're the center of the target and they want to attack you for it.
Right. And well, we don't apologize on our program. We are conservative Christians, but we're conservative Christians who's challenged the status quo of other conservative Christians even. Because it's like, one of the problems in conservative Christianity is that they think that like any criticism against them is just crazy leftists. And I'm like, well, not necessarily. Some of that stuff is legit. Like you got to listen. Like if you're unwilling to listen and take their critique, you're part of the problem. You got to, Is their argument valid? Sometimes, no. Some of it is just stupid. But other ones, it's like, no, that is a legitimate criticism. We should look into that. We should fix that.
Like what?
Oh, shoot. Like, first off, how we treat, pastor worship. What I call it. It's when you have a pastor that is unquestionable in his authority. And so what you have is leftists are, I don't want to say leftists all the time, but people more on the left or whatever, or maybe non as conservative Christians. Maybe I should be more charitable. But what you'll have is these people go, well, what the problem is with that is it creates basically an authoritarian structure. And authoritarianism isn't very good. And so what happens is you get a bunch of people that follow a dude blindly, and then that's how, okay, everyone follows him. Well, then that's when scandals happen. That's when sexual abuse happens. That's when all these things happen, because he's the unquestionable authority. And how is that like 16-year-old girl going to tell her parents that the guy they basically worship is actually a predator?
Yeah. They're
not going to.
Yeah.
It's going to cause more problems. So it's like, well, no. When they're saying that that's wrong, we need to have things, checks and balances in place. They're not wrong about that.
Yeah.
There's actually a very popular pastor. Many people are probably very familiar with this name, John MacArthur. And like during COVID, he took a stand. I'm not closing down my church. And that's funny because I was like, I agree with that.
Did he get in trouble for it?
Oh yeah. California was finding them like every day.
Oh,
But John MacArthur also, come to find out, kicked out a woman who was experiencing abuse. But she would not return to her husband. She was divorcing her husband. And basically he was like, you're unrepentant, so you're kicked out from the church. A little bit later, the man goes to prison for sexually abusing all his children. And you're like, and the story gets broken out. I mean, it's very well sourced and is by a woman.
When did this happen?
Oh man, this just came out a few months ago.
Whoa.
We did an episode on it.
And why isn't it mainstream news?
You would think, but he kicked her out. But this was because she kicked her. The footage was leaked and all this came out. And it happened years ago, like 10, 20 years ago, something like that. It was a long time ago when it happened. I don't remember exactly when. Maybe not 20 years, but anyway, a while ago.
Yeah.
And it came out fully, and he kicked this lady out. And what's funny is that all the Reformed churches were like, controversy where? I don't see anything. Like they act like it wasn't even happening. I'm like, no. And they basically said that anyone who's criticizing MacArthur for this is essentially a crazy, like leftist, liberal Christian, and they just hate a conservative Christian. I'm like, no. We also have a problem with that. So the whole point is being able to challenge that status quo. So I make no qualms with the fact that sometimes conservative Christianity can be really stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief. I actually heard somebody the other day quoting First Peter talking about election, and like in the Bible, election basically are the covenant people. If you believe in God, you're part of the elect, so it's a covenant people. And she was using that verse talking about how important it is for the upcoming election, and I was like, well, no, that's not what that's talking. And I'm like, this is why people criticize because you guys are dumb. Like this is just stupid. So. Anyway, by the way, I'm speaking far more rash than normal, but I'm talking.
You're good. You're good.
This is like a brotherly chat.
Yeah,
so
no, this is
anyone
fun.
online listening, I don't care. I'm talking to my brother. If you don't like this, I'm sorry.
They're turning it off right now.
Yeah, they're just like, I'm canceling him. He does suck. So yeah. Anyway, so we go back. So essentially what it was because some people have heard my story. I have a sermon called Victim Culture is Anti-Gospel. So for any Christians curious about what I have to say about victim culture and how it relates to Christianity, go check it out there. But there is what happened essentially was my family did foster care for years. Okay. So we had multiple kids that came in through our home before you came in. And so that was very normal for me. We had kids that came in, we had once in a while, you just, hey, by the way, you have new brothers and sisters in your house. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's got to be a whole new dynamic every single time. Strange.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it was. It irritates me because I was the baby of the family and I had all the rights. And then we'd get these younger kids. I'm like, gosh, dang it. There goes my, and then I became like a middle child, all neglected and angsty.
Oh, okay.
David's like, you want to play? So then you came in, and it was funny because when you came in, I was so over foster care. Like I was just.
I could tell.
Yeah, weird, right? Well, you could tell?
I could tell. But
I wasn't hostile toward you or anything?
I think that it was on both ends. I think that you were obviously kind of territorial because we're coming into your home. But then...
It's my space, bro.
Right. But then we're also going into a whole new situation, and we got to kind of like, okay, this is who I am. You're not going to step over me either.
Right. So it was this weird.
It's this weird dynamic.
Yeah. So at first it was like you and I clashed.
Yeah.
It was definitely a clash.
It was definitely a clash.
And then over time we started kind of like learning to get along.
I think we had to.
Yeah.
I think, or maybe I learned that I was going to get in trouble.
Yeah, maybe I guess better like this dork or else I'll get in trouble. Holy cow. And no, don't need to get kicked out of another home. Am I right? So what happened is, so you're in, what time, how old were you when you came into our house?
I think I was 9.
Yeah. So you're at like 8 or 9 and I'm 2 years older than you.
Yeah.
So I was like 11.
Yeah.
Something like that. And anyone who knows your story and my story knows our home was not healthy. Usually what happened, and this is the other reason why I hated I said foster kids. That was going to sound terrible. But like I hate, like as a child, I didn't like it, right? So I was like, I don't like these kids coming to my home, but it wasn't necessarily always against the child.
Right.
It was also, it was a new dynamic all the time shifting for me. But the other issue was mom. Was because every single child that came in, we always took them in 2s because we had bunk beds. We always take 2. Every single time, one of them she would pick was like her absolute favorite and would like doted on them and loved them. And the other one, she just treated like the devil. And so if anyone's read the book, A Child Called It, like that whole story, like basically one of the children was the child called It and the other one was one that she loved and toted around.
But it's weird because it was almost every set of kids that she had. Even after us.
Yes. Well, it was always that way. Even with growing up before foster kids, it was me and Melinda, and she treated Melinda more with disdain. But it just got increasingly worse when we got foster kids in because it wasn't her own flesh and blood, you know. So, but what it was that she liked the foster care because she would go to church and she would brag about how we're taking in kids, and this is and it's frustrating because I know the system's broken. And nowadays, especially with the recent stuff like where Roe v. Wade was overturned, you're hearing a lot of talk about the foster system. Like it's better to abort children than put them in the foster system. The foster system's jacked up, and it's funny because as somebody who was literally lived and breathed the foster system, you and I both, I'm like, my always response is like, yeah, it does suck. Trust me, I know. Like my mom was crazy. At the same time, I'm also glad that I have my brother David, you know, and that somebody didn't want like, well, he's going to go in the foster system, so kill him, you know. So
maybe your mom should swallow. Oh, did I just say that?
Oh,
did I just say that?
Oh, that's not okay.
Oh man,
I am going.
No.
Yep. Well,
guys, I'm drinking booze here.
It's a problem.
That is a problem.
So, I'm never going to be able to share this. So then what ends up happening?
I'm just going to say for the record that William has nothing to do with me. He's literally on here just sharing a story.
I have nothing to do with you. You're literally my brother.
Well, I mean, as far as what I say, you do not own what I say.
No one's going to be able to control your mouth. No one's been able to.
Go back to my past episodes. I literally say all kinds of wild shit.
It's literally a thing where it's like, oh my, I wish I could remember the comeback. There's one time Mom was on one of her psychotic tirades.
I could probably tell you.
And you were on your way down the stairs, and she said something to you. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was a moment where your eyes sparkled, and you looked up. You said something super smart at her, and I don't remember what it was. I just remember you say, and it like set her off. I don't know if it's because you may have called her something like bitch or something. I don't know. I feel like it was something like you took what she said at you and you flipped it on her as a zinger.
Yeah.
And she just was not okay with that.
It became like one of those things that I always looked for something funny to say in that moment. And I'd try to use whatever she said as like ammunition. I'd try to flip it on her. Because then she never knew what to do. She would freak out. Well, it was hilarious. It made me laugh.
So what happens when you're a narcissist? You're not used to people playing your own game. What? Only I can do that. So yeah. Anyway, you came into the home, and I remember it was this dynamic. But you and I started learning. But I didn't like the foster kid thing because it was always, oh, Mom's gonna flip on one of them. Mom's going to hate one of them, and then she's going to go on a crazy tirade. She's going to act psychotic, and then
was it that bad when there wasn't any foster kids in the home?
It wasn't as bad. It was bad, but it wasn't as bad. It was weird. Like once you add to the foster kids, it added this tension.
What do you think that is? Why would there have to be one child that would be like the target?
I mean, if you want to psychoanalyze Donna, I can do that. I mean,
you just name dropped.
Sorry, her name's Donna. So she, but the whole thing was, it comes down to like, how do I think it's because of some of the stuff she experienced growing up. So because from what I understand in their home life, one child was always picked out too and hated on. And what happened is that our aunts, the twins, they would like intercept the abuse and protect the other children. So one always was to blame, and the others were other ones were the protectors. So I think a lot of that was being emulated as she struggled with trying to like come around to it. And now that we know that mom has early on stage dementia, actually a lot of the stuff makes sense because it would, some of those symptoms would have been happening pretty early. And I think she also has like some BPD, so anyway, there's a whole, I think she has a personality disorder. I think there's a lot of stuff going on there. So now that she's also got this, she's having like cognitive issues, and we see that, and it's like, actually I've looked into it more and more, and I've talked to a few psychologists. It actually makes a lot of sense that I think some of that stuff from growing up was being mirrored in our growing up.
Yeah.
So
well, that's one thing I really realized, not to take away from your story at all, but like growing up and leaving that environment, I know I would, I'm sorry, I'm a little buzzed. Can't talk. I know that when I first moved out, I was like, I never want to be like them. Like, I don't want to do the things that they did. But then, like, as time goes on, you end up in, like, bad relationships, and you kind of get some resentment, and then you end up with kids, and life just keeps happening. You kind of start falling back into those ways.
Well, it's easier, right? Fall into the pattern that you're used to.
Yeah. And that's one thing I realized. And I've luckily at a very young age realized that, okay, I don't like the way I'm behaving. I need to like make an proactive choice to change and treat people differently. Right. Otherwise, I'm going to be following that same cycle.
Right. Absolutely. So it's one of those. So then what would happen is that, so this foster care thing, and dad did it because he actually wanted to help kids, because dad also was from a horribly abusive home. When you hear his stories, like some of his stuff is messed up too.
The cigar is really good, by the way.
I know. I do a good job, man. I don't play games. If I'm gonna get canceled or yelled at by Christian folks, I got to make it worth it.
That's true.
So for those who don't know, sometimes smoking a cigar or something like that is very controversial in the church. So,
and you're okay with it, obviously.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. There's nothing in the Bible about it, so at me, bro.
It's natural.
Yeah, just don't inhale it, bro. Like, don't get yourself lung cancer. Okay?
Yeah, you're not supposed to inhale them.
Yeah, no. So the other thing is so I think when you're dealing what it was with mom, dad wanted to help kids, which I think he actually exemplified that a lot. Like, you could tell he wanted to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for him, he was married to a psycho. So, so you have this dynamic where what happens is that she would go to church and she'd brag about taking on children, right? Oh yeah, we're helping more kids. Yeah. And then everyone's like, wow, what saints? And then go home and just, abuse them. Yeah. That's what she would do. And, I, even the day before we got married, my wife and I, the agency calls, like, we have these two girls, we want to take them in. And I was like, don't bring them in. Like, we have the rehearsal dinner tomorrow night. We got XYZ going on. Look, we got too much going on for the kids, but it was a bragging rights thing. So when we're at the rehearsal dinner, she's like, look at what you did. Look what we took on. We took on kids. Aren't we great and grand? And I remember me and Callie were like, dude, that's another, like,
it's gross.
Like, yeah, it is gross. Yeah. Like, this is like our wedding. If you could just let our wedding be our wedding, and just let the family be the family. But now you have these girls who are, and it's not the kids' fault. You got ripped from your home, from your mom and your siblings, and you got thrust into this new home. It's a foreign environment. It's weird for kids. I mean, it's weird as adults sometimes getting used to a new environment, let alone children.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to throw them in that also at a wedding where there's people that they don't know, all sorts of chaos. I'm like, that's almost not fair for the kid at that point.
It really isn't, because a lot of people don't realize when you do go into foster care, it's almost like you're having to deal with a loss of like your situation, your home, your family,
your identity,
and your identity of who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to try to figure out who I am now, what's going to be my life.
Right.
And to, like you said, be thrown into this wedding surrounded by all these people you don't know, and you're just celebrating, like, hooray, congrats. And then,
who is this guy? And this bride? I don't care. Where's my mom? I was just taken away from my mom, right? Oh, but everyone's happy.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I should be happy.
Yeah,
but I can't be.
Why put the needless pressure? So anyway, it was always a bragging rights thing with her.
Yeah.
So, and I do want to say before we talk about anything critical of anything growing up, Dad and we talk regularly, not as regularly as we should, but I have a good relationship with Dad. I even have a relationship. I'm in contact with my mom. I wouldn't say we have like a relationship.
It's hard to have a relationship with someone who doesn't remember.
Right. She has dementia, so it makes it a little complicated.
Yeah.
It's usually, I feel like I'm talking to like a 7-year-old, continually like, yeah, Mom. Oh, how was that? How'd that make you feel? Oh, very nice. It was actually really funny.
It's very surface level.
Yeah. I
communication.
talked to her last Thursday or something like that. I talked to her briefly. It was really funny because just midway through the conversation, she was just talking and she's like, yeah, so, oh, well, it was really good to hear from you. Okay, I love you. Bye. And I was like, well, that was weird. But it's like, because she literally was her brain process that we're at the end of the conversation for whatever given reason.
Interesting.
She doesn't even know her age or anything. It's actually really crazy. So
that is so
like,
wild.
how old are you? She's like, in my 50s. And I'm like, oh, okay. Whoa. So anyway, so you came in, and then by the way, my story is your story, it's our story.
Yeah.
Because what happened is, like, Melinda, our oldest sister, she's 4 years older than me, and so she goes off to college, and I think that's when things really went downhill.
Yeah.
Because Melinda, in a lot of ways, was like this little security glue for other people in the home. Melinda was definitely Dad's security blanket.
Well, I remember, like, when she went off to college, I cried because I was like what's going to happen now?
Yeah, who's going to protect us now from crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, I did the same thing. When we were at the hotel and we dropped her off, and that was her last night, when I hopped in the shower, I was like, I'm going to shower. And really what I wanted to shower was code for, I'm going to go sob in that shower right now. Because, it was this weird thing because Mom was extremely abusive. For people who don't know, there's one of the foster girls who she had a lot of emotional issues, a lot of them, like raging temper tantrums 3 a.m. for 3, 4, or 5 hours straight of shrieking. And Mom would literally like grab this girl and drag her through our rock garden. And she's like 4, and just drag her through the rock garden. And then, like, if this girl like even like picked at her crotch, Mom would like start like going like this at her crotch with her hands and go, you like that? You want to keep touching yourself? No, then stop it. Like, it was super gross and sexual and just really uncomfortable. So
definitely couldn't get away with that now.
No. So, the agency didn't know. That's the thing. And, whenever there was anything reported or people were suspicious of stuff, they do an investigation. Of course, they ask us kids stuff. And I wasn't going to admit to anything going on in the home because my other thought was, well, it's already bad, but at least I know this crazy terrain. Like, I know how to navigate this craziness, and I don't want to be removed from my brothers. I don't want to leave them. I'd rather go through hell here than risk another hell that I'm less familiar with and be separated from my brothers. So it was this weird trade-off. So when Melinda left, I think that's when things for me, you and me, really became real. Because that Mom was already targeting you so hard at this point. And for people who don't know, I don't know how much you told your story. These are just a couple of things.
It was very surface level.
Okay.
I didn't really share all that much because one of the things that I've also kind of come to terms with is during all this time, I've learned to kind of forget about a lot of this stuff, and I think I've done it purposely to protect myself. I think my brain just automatically just forgets some of the things that happen.
We compartmentalize as a safety feature, essentially, for your brain.
Yeah.
Fail safe. But I'm going to bring it back all your PTSD. So, all right.
Lovely. I'm going to drown it in booze.
Well, I just distinctly remember this one time I came home from school. You were thrown outside during the day because Dad worked during the day, and that's when she would act the worst.
Yeah.
And you were up against the little front porch area, and you were in shorts and a T-shirt, and it was in the middle of the dead winter in like a blizzard. She threw you in, and I basically opened the door, carried you in, and then I went upstairs and had words. There was times where she would throw out all your belongings into the front yard, screaming that she hates you. She sending you back to the state. This was after adoption, by the way. Like, we love you so much. We adopted you. Okay, now I'm going to keep threatening to send you back to the state.
We only adopted you because we wanted your brother.
Right. Well, actually, that was I'm not sure if we ever talked about those adoption conversations. So when they wanted to adopt you because there's no one else in your family that would, your aunt, I think, had passed, and the only one that thought would, and Dad was like, I really want to adopt them because they don't have a home. And again, Dad being Dad, that's what he wants to do. Now, the Dad, I think, did his best, but he didn't quite understand how to. Sometimes for him, in his mind, it was easier not to fight and just let Mom be crazy and just kind of be passive.
I think a lot of it, too, was he didn't understand the full extent of everything. Because
he's at work.
Yeah, he was gone all day.
So what would happen is that, and whenever he'd come home from work, you'd see like she would run to him and start trying to manipulate the situation. David did this. David did. They, of course, all out of context, and never telling how she was the instigator. So,
but as a husband, like, who are you supposed to believe? Like, you're coming home to this. Like,
after you just worked on the line for...
Yeah. Are you supposed to believe your wife who you're married to? Or are you supposed to believe this kid who supposedly lies all the time?
Right. Hence the problem. So what ended up happening was so when Melinda left, I was like scared because I realized that the role of protector was basically being passed on to me.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, dude, you're in charge.
How old were you, by the way? You're like 13, 14?
13, 14?
Yeah.
And it was like, and things get violent in the house, right? Like there's things thrown, there's people slapped. Dude, I really distinctly remember at like 6 a.m., 5 a.m., multiple times, you literally being dragged out of your bed out of nowhere, mom screaming at you because you didn't, move your clothes from the washer to the dryer. Keep in mind, you were the only child that was supposed to do his own laundry.
Or you load the dishwasher the wrong way.
Yeah.
She'd come in with banging pots and pans.
Yep. And then just
5 in the morning.
Which, remember, she would actually tell that's what her dad would do to them.
Yeah.
He'd come in with pots and pans and throw them out of bed. And like I said, a lot of it's reflective. So what ends up happening is, I'd hear that and I'd run up downstairs completely in my underwear and drag mom out of the room. And we'd have a great knockout, drag out fight at 6 a.m. Nothing like that to get your blood rush in the day. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm awake.
Mind you, it's also school day.
Yes.
And you got to get up and go to school after you've just had war. You just went to war.
Yeah, all morning long. Literally, multiple times where she's like, I'm leaving, and she tried to like run someone over with a car, stuff like that.
Oh my gosh. This is so much.
That's one of the things that one of the times, this was when Melinda was protector, if you could say. This will always be concreted in my memory.
Talking about the slap?
The slap.
Oh my gosh, that's notorious.
I love how we call it the slap. The slap heard around the world. So for those of you who don't know, my mom and my sister were getting after it, arguing, and it was nasty because mom was one of those things where mom was being violent or nasty toward you again, because she would do things like slap you in the face, say you're stupid, you're never going to amount to anything, you're just a piece of garbage, and all sorts of stuff, which is great for little egos. But want your kid to do good, that's what you do. So so the Melinda and her are just going after it, and mom decided to just slap her. And Melinda, just without skipping a beat, is like, whop, and just like hits mom. Her glasses fly across the room. Mom spins and hits the floor. You and I were right next to each other because I was holding you. Because
my mouth dropped.
Yeah, I was literally holding you because like it was so violent. You were like crying at the time, and I was holding you like, I'm gonna protect you here. And then you and I both went and just laughed. And then she looked at us like, what's so funny? And we're like, nothing.
As she's trying to pick herself up off the door.
I was like, dang, Melinda's got one heck of a right hook, So anyway, it was but then after that it was years of every day's a fight.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't a fight, you were on edge waiting for one.
Yeah.
So, and it was this weird thing where, because I knew at this point you and I had grown very close. We became best friends. Wherever David was, I was. Wherever I was, David was.
Well, it was so bad that you and I almost had to learn like a secret language in a sense.
Yeah.
Like I would like whenever they were like, "Hey, was David doing this at this time?" I would be like, and that'd be like, yeah, like he was good.
Yeah, like, there's a way there's a way we'd communicate in the room, just a shift in the body.
Yeah.
Or a glance of the way the eyes would work, that we would communicate to each other from a distance. The right way to respond to avoid more chaos.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
It is insane.
Like,
you should have to do that.
We should have to do that. So then everyone wonders why I am as cantankerous as I am. Like, why is Will always fighting? I'm like, because I'm more comfortable in a fight than anything else. I don't know anything besides fighting. So actually, it's kind of a weird psychological thing that I think there's actually some truth to that joke. But
there probably is.
So anyway, all this stuff was happening, and I just remember getting so frustrated, and also it was like I was always at war. I was ready to fight all the time, literally physically fight.
Yeah.
Like we've literally fought and bled for each other. I mean, there was one time, but what was happening is that Dad was reaching a breaking point. So as the chaos ensued, Dad's psyche was going down as well. Where he used to, if things went too crazy, he would intervene, and then those two would fight, and then we'd be able to like scurry off in a corner like little rats, and like wait for it to be over. Thanks, bud. So then it turned into Dad just kind of ignoring it. Like I remember there's many times like she'd be doing the thing in the room where she's screaming at you and doing her normal thing where she's hitting you, slapping you, telling you things are terrible, and he would just sit there like turn up the volume on the TV and was like, I'm not dealing with this. Which I, of course, had major issue with because I'm like, I don't care how exhausted you are. You're the father. That's your son. Do something. And he recognizes that now. Like Dad knows he's not perfect. Dad has
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, exactly. And he's apologized multiple times. And I know growing up, his whole life was a fight. And then he marries into it, and then it's nothing but a fight. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse. So I think at this point, Dad was also like psychologically
he checked out.
Yeah, he was. I can't do it.
Yeah, he grabbed his bags and he left.
Yeah,
but. At the same time, I think he was trying his best to just kind of keep things together. And so at that point, he probably did like the bare minimum that was necessary.
Well, also comes down to because the way the church, because we were raised independent fundamental Baptists.
Yeah.
If anyone doesn't know that, we call it IFB for short. The church split. We've covered the IFB a lot on our channel. And one of the big things with the IFB is that divorce is not okay. You can't ever divorce under any possible circumstances.
Which is very interesting.
Lest you be ostracized from the church.
Because your wife can literally leave you and cheat on you, and you're still supposed to accept her back.
Pretty much. Which is funny because actually, not to get too heavy into the Bible part, but like there are actual biblical reasons for divorce. Like Jesus literally says, if there's adultery, like if someone cheats on somebody, that you have a legitimate reason for divorce.
And how do you win somebody back after that?
Right.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's going to take some work, right? And that should be
that can be a choice.
Right.
It should be a choice. But like, how do you fully win that person back? Like they chose to leave you and give themselves to somebody else.
Right. Which is like, okay, well, and if you want to save them, great. And if you can have them back and that's your choice, have at it. But that shouldn't be anything that anyone is required to do. So anyway, this just keeps unfolding, and it was very, and I think I started emulating a lot of toxic behaviors, especially toward the end. It got to a point where I hit my breaking point, and I even turned on you for a short minute.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Because I was just like, why the heck? Because you were also.
Well, this was also after. We should probably go into that, but This was after you had went to Fairhaven.
Right.
So, you had gone off to college, and at that point I was on my own. Things were actually kind of good for a while. And then you came back, and I was kind of rebelling in a sense, but in a sense it was also like kind of self-preservation a little bit.
Right.
And I don't think you've seen that aspect of it. No, you just kind of seen my rebellion.
Right. And I was just like, this isn't the way to do it, David. What the crap are you doing? And so then you and I there was one time, then you and I got into like a physical altercation. And like, I don't even know what happened. Like, I basically saw red and I was literally choking you.
Yeah.
Like choking you. I pinned you down. And then like, I don't know, like Superman kicked up and then you like threw me into the wall. It was actually pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie.
I literally couldn't breathe and you're choking me out and I'm like, and I'm laying on a bed and mind you, I'm scrawny. So scrawny back then.
Oh,
and you're a man. Like you had a man body and you're choking me out. And I'm like, I'm going to die. This is how I'm going to die. I'm going to die by this kid choking me out. So I'm like, I'm not dying this way. And I grabbed you and I somehow mustered up the strength to just run you across the room. I stood up and ran you across the room.
There's a giant hole in the wall.
There was a giant hole.
That was awesome.
Oh my God.
And actually, it was one of those weird moments when that happened. I was like, I had a moment where I was like, what have I become? Like it was actually like a really weird, like that moment of, oh my gosh, my brother I've turned on. And it's because things were so toxic and violent in the house for so long. And then I came back to it after I was gone. I came back and it was bad again. And like my guard wasn't, my mental and emotional state wasn't right. And then Fairhaven was also emotionally, spiritually crazy. And I was like, what in the world? So that was actually a really like, if you could say a come to Jesus moment, where I realized like, no, I'm not doing this. I am not doing this anymore. And I know you and I were like, for a minute, but then you and I quickly got over it.
I think at that moment I realized that like I can no longer be in the house. Right. I needed to leave because like obviously you and I were at odds and we had always been cool. We'd always been, like ride or die. And in that moment, I'm like, he's no longer on my side. I need to leave. I need to get out of here.
Yeah, because again, and that's when I realized I'd betrayed you. Like that was a weird moment for me because it was like, again, you were rebelling, but then you were like, when you were rebelling, you were super sassy about it too. You were not easy on it either. Like, cause you were just like, no. And
it's all or nothing.
Yeah. And I was like, because you were also being like extra sassy. I was like, dude, do you even care about me anymore? And you were like, no. And then that's when I snapped. I was like, you freaking kid. Like, and then I don't know. It was funny. It was just funny because but it goes to show though, and this is part of probably what your whole platform's about. You can rise above horrible things that you have been done to you, that you've done to others.
Exactly.
Because it's like, I mean, I wasn't perfect. But what happened beforehand, which was
I'm also a big supporter in the fact that even if you did something shitty, that you shouldn't be defined by that.
Right.
Like if you've done something that's bad, you can turn that around.
Right.
You don't need to let that hinder the rest of your life.
Especially when you realize toxic environments breed more toxicity.
Right.
So it's like, as you're in the toxic environment, you become more toxic.
Right.
Right. Because you were becoming toxic and I was becoming toxic.
Yeah.
And that's what put you and I at odds. We're just really crappy people.
Yep.
Just being really, really crappy people. And so it was a weird moment. But I mean, I remember there was times before like this weird moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming the very thing I hate. Which was actually a good thing. Like, I know people are like, well, that's horrible. I'm like, it is horrible, but it was a good thing for me because it was my moment.
Yeah. Yeah. You weren't 40 when you realized it.
Yeah. Thank the Lord. Right. Like, oh my gosh. But up until that point before that, I mean, it was like you and I were ride or dies. I mean, it was what would happen during the day is that you'd be like the household slave. So you go to school all day, come home, and mom would make you work all day. Yeah. She'd always find a reason to ground you so you can be partake of any family activities or anything.
There was a point in time where I was literally grounded for a whole year straight.
Yep.
And it was something to where like it was something like minor. Like I got grounded for like loading the dishwasher wrong or something like that. And it was every time something happened, like if I gave an attitude or something, oh, that's another week.
Yeah, if she's like, another you do week. This, and you're like, and then
that's an attitude.
If you scoffed, it was another week in prison.
That's an attitude.
There's one that this one always sticks out as I tell people how crazy it was. She was like, hey, David, what time is it? And you looked at the clock and you were like 4:15. And she like gets up, walks all the way over to the clock to check your work. She's like, it is 4:13. You lying to me? And you're like, wait, what? Like 4:13 is 4:15.
I remember the exact situation. So it was literally like 3:57 or 8 when she asked me. And I was like, it's 4:00. Because, you always round up.
Right.
And it's only 2 minutes away.
You round up to the nearest 15th.
And I swear she jumped up immediately to go check. And I'm assuming she asked me because she knew the time. Because why else would she jump up and go check the time if she asked me? And she gets up and goes and checks the time. And she's like, it's actually 3:58. You lied to me, blah, blah, blah. And I don't remember what happened.
Another week in prison.
Yeah. I probably got grounded for that one.
So, but what would happen is like she put like an alarm on your door. Like she put an alarm on your door so you couldn't leave it.
Still didn't stop me from sneaking out.
Nope. Well, and that's yeah. Well, then what would happen? So at night, I would like, dude, we're confessing all our sins. I'll never be able to share.
Sorry, Dad. Dad's gonna be like, I knew it.
so like there was times where like I'd sneak, like I'd turn off your alarm. I let you hang out with me. We just hang out till like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning because it's the only time we had like peace. And but a lot of times you weren't allowed to eat. So what would happen is like she'd make a 3-course steak dinner, and she would give you plain oatmeal, and you would just eat plain oatmeal all the time because she just hated you.
Yeah.
And so what would happen at night is I would usually be like, all right, we're gonna go grab food. I'd take you to McDonald's or something like that. We'd bring home food. We like steal the car, like turn on. And do you remember every time we turn on, like we open the garage, we're like wait, and we're like, all right, here it is. We're gonna get busted. Never did. And we always we'd go joyriding in the Malibu.
Well, Dad was deaf.
Deaf.
We could get away with anything with him.
Yeah, we could literally be like talking smack about him behind his back. I still do it. I'll say something smart. And he's like, what'd you say? I'm like,
nothing.
Sorry, Dad. This is like a thing ingrained from childhood. It's really a lot of fun. I know it's like fun at your expense, but it's still fun. Yeah, it was this weird thing where it's like, I distinctly remember there's one time, all right, we're going to get personal. I had a surgery done. Yeah, you just start snickering now. So I had a cyst a benign cyst on my left testicle for all you wonderful listeners. And I had to be surgically removed. And I just remember them talking about the procedure, and I was like 17 and mortified.
Yeah, because you're going to be one ball short.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to be one ball Billy. I don't want to be one ball Billy. And then, so they were like, oh, if it's cancerous, don't worry, no big deal. We'll remove the testicle and we'll patch it back up and you're fine. I'm like, don't worry about it.
Patch it back up.
Yeah. Like, so they're just talking like they're going to remove the testicle like it's no big deal. I'm like, no, it's a big deal. I'm 17. This is a really big deal to me. Everything came out fine. We're good. No cancer. We're good. Everything's intact. But, so I remember
Or is it?
It is. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Andrew does this to me too. Every time he tries to like sow seeds of doubt. So everyone's in the room like, oh, is Will like a full man? Then
William was transgender before it was cool.
Yeah, y'all jumping on the hype train. I was born in it, molded by it. Ew. All right. So what, totally not. But anyway, so I remember I'm recovering from that. So like I can't move. Like, I'm just over there. Like, I mean, if you ever had this procedure done, you basically feel like you were like given an astronomical kick in the nuts.
Yeah.
So it's just like, ow. And she was going after you because she thought I couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I was in the shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in the shower, and this is what she tried to pull you out or something like that.
I was how old was I? I was like 15.
Something like that.
Yeah, I was a teenager.
Yeah, 15. I was 17. So yeah, that's right. And then I remember I was like, you gotta be joking. You gotta be joking. Because I knew I had to move to stop it.
It was literally the day you came home.
Yeah.
From the hospital.
Luckily, drugs are good. So I ran upstairs and I ripped her out of the bathroom.
She was trying to pull me out.
Right.
Because I should probably give a backstory on that. There were certain times where I couldn't take a shower. So the thing is we were gone all night, like running errands and at church or whatever, and then we came home. And obviously it was past the time where I could typically take a shower. Well, generally, if we were gone busy doing something, that they forced us to do, then I could just take a shower. It wasn't a big deal.
Right.
But because I didn't ask and I just assumed that I could do that, it merited the right for her to come in and rip me out of the shower.
Right.
For a while she was shutting the light off on me, and I still showered. I still continued. She thought that would get me out, and
I'm gonna keep lathering up. Actually,
no, I purposely took as long as possible. I'm like, if you're gonna shut the light off on me, like, why am I gonna get out?
And what are you gonna do? Pull me out of this thing? Oh wait. So I ran up there, pulled her out, and we're downstairs and we're arguing. She's like, "You're supposed to be sitting down. Sit down. You're gonna get yourself hurt." I'm like, "Well, stop acting crazy, and I won't have to get myself hurt." She literally picks up a Kirby vacuum, and if anyone knows a Kirby vacuum, that thing is heavy.
Steel.
Yeah, and she picks it up like a bat. She's going to like use it on me. And I was like, first off, she's uncoordinated. So it was one of the funniest things to watch. And then I was really big into martial arts at this time. So actually, honestly, without even thinking, it just was a reflex. I kicked her down, which was also, by the way, a big mistake. We just had testicular surgery. Suddenly I was like, that was a mistake. She went down, but then she got upset. She ran upstairs and locked herself in the room. And there's other times where it's like, if she'd act a certain way, like kicking you on the ground, and then she'd go upstairs in her room and be like, leave me alone. Well, no, we're going to talk about that. And then if you go in the room, she would start stripping, like, I'm going to get naked, so you're going to have to leave. And you're like, well, please don't, but we're still going to talk about this. So it was nuts. I mean, it was super toxic. So I'm sure what my whole point is, I'm trying to paint a picture of what we were going through. Okay.
Yeah.
Dad and I didn't get along. Dad and I are very weird personality types as far as differences. He's introverted. I'm extroverted. He's like very outdoorsman. I'm very nerdy. So it's like we're very polar opposites. And I think that made us also clash growing up because we did not think similarly.
Yeah.
And so there was plenty of times Dad got violent with me. I think I'm the only kid he got violent with. Did he ever get violent with you?
No.
Yeah.
He knew better.
So there was like one Sunday morning before we went to church, ironically, and he had grabbed my throat and punched me in the face, and Melinda had to like tackle him down. I had like this nice hand mark. And it was mainly because him and Mom got in a fight, and I interjected, and he was like, "Yo," and I'm like, "I'm not going because it's about David, and I'm involved because I'm the protector." Again, I'm that one who's like, I took the mantle.
Yeah.
And he was like, get in your room. And I ran down the hallway and I started just yelling at him down the hallway. He's like, get in your room. I'm like, I am in my room. As petty as you can imagine. And then he gets in there and I'm literally... You and I were so...
We were smart asses.
To the nth degree. And I'm like...
But the thing is like you kind of had to be.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because otherwise you could not survive.
No, absolutely.
It was not for the faint of heart.
No.
Like, you had to learn how to make fun of the whole situation and just kind of, like, make everybody look like idiots. Like, I am in my room. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
I'm in my doorway.
Yeah, and I'm literally standing like the carpet, like my carpet was green and the hallway carpet was tan. And it was just like this, and my toes were right up against it. Like, there's about a millimeter, and I'm like, I'm in my room. He's like, get in there. I'm like, no, I'm right here. And then that's when he grabbed me and he hit me. But I mean, it is what it is. And then one day I remember I snapped on him. We got into a big fist fight, gave him 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and a concussion, and a sliced cheek. I mean, I went to town. And it was finally like the day where it's like after Dad had gotten physical with me a few times, I snapped. And I just remember, again, it was one of those see red moments. That wasn't my come to Jesus moment, though, because I had that moment where I was like, you added me, bro. You grabbed me, and I finally just let you know that you're not touching me again. And then our pastor, instead of like reprimanding him for like letting violence exist in the home continually, he looks at me and goes, "Oh, you should never hear that dishonors your father." I'm like, but hello? There's a lot of things here that aren't right.
But you literally see this on almost a day-to-day basis, and they're saying that you shouldn't replicate what you're seeing.
I mean, they were there when Mom got arrested.
I know.
Like, she gets hauled off to jail for child abuse.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, William, why would you ever get physical with any of your parents?
Why would you be so disrespectful?
Yeah, and it's like, hello, are you even in the same world?
Let's talk about that for a minute, because
let's talk about that.
That's one thing I talk a lot about.
Let's talk about that.
That's one thing I talk a lot about on the podcast is how because I mean, obviously it's about rising above, but I also talk a lot about the foster care system. But I also talk about how the church allowed a lot of this to happen, and they knew the extent of things.
Yeah.
And they still allowed it to happen. Why is that? Doesn't a church have a responsibility to report what's going on and to, like, even, I understand that they want to keep families together. Right. They don't want families to split, and they want to do their best to counsel people and
protect them, bring them together. Yeah, they want growth from the kids.
But when there's counts of abuse.
Right.
Why wasn't that reported?
I have no idea. I've never understood that weird cover-up thing. When I was a youth pastor, I had to be a whistleblower on a sexual abuse situation. Is
that something a lot of churches are pretty tight-knit about? Or
well, depends which groups. Certain groups are more privy than others. And usually the more authoritarian, the more that exists. And our churches,
why is that?
Honestly, I have no idea, dude. I think it comes down to the fact that because when you're authoritarian, we follow that man. We follow this is the way we do things. We follow
God, and God would want the man of God or the person who's appointed, like the leadership, to try to fix things.
Right. And it's like, well, we're not going to go to the state, because I think some people have this weird idea, because I think in Corinthians it talks about like, don't take your brother to court and like sue them, like work it out like men essentially. And people are like, well, we can't take him to court. I'm like, that's not what it's talking about. Like Romans 13 and plenty of other places, like, hello, the government's there for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, like, obey the law. And if not, you have an obligation to your leadership of the law.
Right.
So there's a lot of backwards thinking in those groups. And actually, our youth pastor has actually apologized. I don't know if he apologized to you yet. But
he's reached out a few times. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where he's like, hey, man, I look back and I'm like, dude, he was raised in some crazy environment too. He was like 20 something.
I don't know.
Early 20s.
I think you think about that, because I remember being a teenager and watching him come in, and he was like 21 or something like that.
Yeah, he was just out of Bible college.
Dude, I remember when I was 21.
I didn't know anything, and I was stupid.
I wasn't doing anything different than this,
but far more irresponsible. And so, like,
I was still drinking and driving when I was 21.
And you definitely went through a different phase than I did. I got all my stuff out in high school, which I shouldn't have. But you know,
drinking and driving?
No, I didn't do that. I did not.
You sure?
Do that. I'm pretty sure. Did I?
You sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I didn't drink.
You don't remember my birthday?
Oh, I did not drink and drive with that. Yeah. Why? No, that was not it. I was perfectly fine. And I even came out on the numbers, but there's
You did.
Yeah. So
no, we're good.
Yeah.
No, I was kidding.
Okay. So, well, quick story. On his 21st birthday, I was driving. I was taking him around so he could have some drinks. And I got pulled over because apparently I was going 55 and a 45. I thought it was actually 55. Like, sir, can you get out of the car? And then they had me like so can you say the alphabet backwards? I'm like, bro, I couldn't do that anyway.
I couldn't do that sober.
I'm like, I know it ends with Z.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do that.
ZXY, whatever. And
I remember your wife, Kellyanne, she's like, oh boy.
And they had me take a breathalyzer and I was fine. And they're still like, well, can somebody else drive you? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm below the legal limit, right? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I don't, what? Sure, whatever. I just wanted to get the police off. I didn't want it to cause a scene. So anyway, I was trying to throw my dirty laundry out there. What is wrong with you?
I'm just calling you on your bluff.
Well, it wasn't drinking and driving though. I wasn't drunk. So anyhow, so what ended up happening was, where were we at before you derailed me?
We were talking about the churches and how they cover things up, and we were talking about the youth pastor coming in when he was 21.
Yeah, and
whatever.
It's like, dude, nobody knows what to do. And then he gets in, and there's like a couple families that had some really intense issues, and it's like, I look back now and I remember going, why can't they fix it? Why can't Pastor so-and-so fix this? Because that's what everyone else thought. Oh, you talk to the pastors if you had any problems. But the problem is like, dude, at seminaries, they don't equip you to be a counselor. They're not counselors. You're theologians.
That's why you shouldn't. That's in my opinion. That's why you shouldn't That's why you shouldn't go to your pastor to be a counselor for your family.
Well, and some pastors are more equipped for it than others. Like I know my current pastor, he's such a good counselor, and he is very good at it. But it's like one of those things where he has kind of specialized in that. So it's like, yeah, because he actually knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
you know. But when you go to seminaries, usually they're teaching you like doctrines, creeds, things like that, and then all of a sudden like, okay, no, you're gonna have to counsel this broken marriage. Huh, good luck. And then you're like, I don't know, like why are you acting? Why have you ever tried not being upset? You know, like that's like all they got, right? So, So yeah, the churches they tend to cover it up. I think it's because they take certain things again out of context. They misunderstand a lot of stuff, which is whatever. So the church a lot of times enabled it, which is another reason why I do what I do with my ministry, which is because like, well, no, we need to correct things. Because if I think that's why the church has such a bad reputation. And the thing is, what's sad is that there's a lot of churches that aren't like that. A good chunk of them are not. Yeah. But you get enough stories of bad ones, and suddenly everyone labels the whole, right? Yeah. That's how any group gets hated on. There's a few bad apples that make everyone else look stupid in that group. Yeah. So that's where you can get you can talk about like some of the crazy like during the 2020 election. They would do this all the time, right? Like, oh, we go to Trump rally, we find the most like ridiculous looking people and ask them why they're voting for Trump, and they say some of the dumbest stuff, and then you go, man, Trump supporters are all stupid.
Well, it's a way to discredit a whole movement, right?
Right. Well, and then and the right does the same thing. You go to like a pride rally, and you find the most ridiculous people.
Find the largest idiot in the group.
Yep.
And like, hey, come here. You want to do an interview? Yeah, I love to do an interview.
And it's like you find the dumbest ones, and you go, that's the whole. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to the church. Like there's a few bad apples that made things really bad, and now the rest of the church is like, oh my gosh, that's not like a bunch of people like my pastor. I know of a situation that was very touchy that he had to deal with. He instantly reported it, handled it perfectly, addressed it to the congregation perfectly. I was like, wow, that's a really healthy way to do this, and the church was like, you could tell, was healthy for it. And that's any group of people. So it's almost like if you're open and honest and just deal with things decently, things that work out pretty well.
Yeah.
Sorry, sarcasm there. But so what ended up happening was we go through all this, and then I go off to college. And at this point, because church was all they knew, and I remember sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Everyone asks this during or after high school. And I just would go, I don't know anything.
Question.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on when you were deciding whether or not you were going to go to college? Like when you realized that you were going to leave, knowing that you were like the defender of like me and the home.
Terrified. Like I didn't.
Because like I could imagine having that responsibility. Like you'd almost feel like there's a sense of responsibility for yourself, knowing that like this place is going to fall apart without me.
Yes. And it was actually, I was terrified for it because I was like, I want to get my life on track. And of course, I want out of here.
Yeah.
But all I was thinking is like, but how bad it is here, I don't know what's going to happen when I'm gone. And so I felt like I was abandoning to a degree. And Melinda felt the same way when she left. She was like, I feel like I'm abandoning my post, so to speak.
It's almost one of those things that you have to do for, like, even though you know that the person that you're supposed to be defending and protecting is going to suffer, but at the same time, it's like for your mental health, for the benefit of yourself, you have to get out of there.
Right. And then also it's like, well, I can't hold my life up forever.
Right.
But I definitely had contemplated not. Like, I thought about not going multiple times. Because I was just like, I can't wrap my head around that. Like, because again, you were my brother. You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you. And that was actually a thing for me. And so when I left, I remember I had a guilt complex. It was weird. I had a girlfriend at the time, and and I felt bad for leaving her. And I was just like, I don't know if this is the right move. And when I was there, then I decided when I was there, I remember I was there for a few weeks, and I was like, I need a reset. I just need a restart from the top. So I actually broke up with my girlfriend, which I actually feel bad for, because I don't think she deserved. I don't think she deserved.
She went to college with you, right?
She went at first, and then she wasn't able to like continue because she just couldn't afford it. And I remember later on when I broke it, I was like, this was my thought was, if I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be at college, I'm going to hit a complete reset button. I want no association with my past life outside of visiting home and, of course, talking to you as I could, but you were so secluded. It was so hard to talk to you.
Yeah.
And all I was thinking is like, man, I really hope he's okay. I really hope he's okay. I really hope he's okay. And when I came home, and that's when, and I remember when I came home, it was this weird, like, I literally cannot handle it. Like it was this weird, like, oh, I forgot how hard this was, because in my brain I had checked out. And that's when I started really emulating those toxic behaviors even more.
Yeah.
And that's when like I said, then you and I started butting heads. And then that's when you and I, like I said, there's that one time I was like, do you care about me anymore? Like, what the heck? Because you were like, so like you had reached a point because you're on your own. And if hindsight 2020, I should have recognized he was on his own. He had to survive, which means he became hardened in order to do so.
Yeah.
And so when I was seeing you acting hard and even toward me, I took it personally.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the crap, David? So you don't even care about me anymore? And you're like, no. And you were just, of course, just being a jerk, because you're just like, I'm going to be as much of a prick right now as possible to make a point. And then I was like, ugh, and I snapped and I attacked you. And then that's when the hole in the wall happened.
Yeah. And then that's when, like, you kind of set in, like, in my mind, like, okay, you're the enemy.
Right.
Like, like, do you remember that time where I... where I said, because one of the things is tattoos. Tattoos were like,
that was hilarious.
Tattoos were like a no-go.
Right.
You couldn't get piercings or tattoos. They're like one of the things that you do not do.
Of the devil.
And one of the things I knew about you is that you got a tattoo when you were at college. One of the most strict colleges possible.
Sneaked out with my friend and got tattoos. Yeah. So I'm over there trying to like reason with you. Mom's yelling at you, and then you go, you think William's so perfect? Go look at his right shoulder blade. And then you were
then
like,
I walked away.
You're like, peace. Just left. And I remember when you did that, I was like, dang, well played. Like
I remember being downstairs and I heard her go, William, what's on your right shoulder blade?
And I remember thinking to myself, dang, well played, David. Like I even remember like I was mad, but I was also just like, okay, all right, David can play back. So it was just weird. And then that's when, of course, I went back to college. And at this point I was like, I'm done being this way. I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I knew that you and I were on rocky steps, but you and I reconnected over time because you moved out.
Yeah. Do you remember when the first time was?
Do you?
No, I don't.
I have no idea.
Actually, I think I remember one of the first times we hung out was when you were doing your internship at Door. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
I stayed the weekend or night with you.
Yeah,
something.
and then we really reconnected, and we basically realized that you and I were both like, yeah, I was crappy, and you're like, yeah, I was crappy too, and I'm like, well, cheers. And this is one of the things that bothers me too nowadays, like, because when people think of somebody who has wronged them, we're, oh, my brother did this when we were in high school. I'm like, dude, it was high school, bro.
Yeah,
that was middle school. Or you know what? If you were raised in a toxic home and your siblings are toxic, well, it's because everyone's toxic in those environments.
Well, and it's the whole idea too that like people don't change, like people can't change.
Right. And then also look at yourself. Like, have you ever messed up? Well, yeah. Okay, then why do you have the arrogance to sit there and think that somebody else can't change if you think you can? And if you don't think anyone can change, What's the point of any of it?
I'd say the worst thing that ever happened between you and I was the fact that you choked me out. But
hands of steel. But I still.
But the thing is like, are we going to let that define our relationship for the rest of our lives?
Right.
No. At what point are you going to reconcile that and just kind of move on?
Exactly.
I mean, maybe that's the broken side of us, but
everyone's like, everyone's listening to this going, Stockholm syndrome, if I've ever heard it. But it was a brother. But also, you know, I've talked to so many dudes, and so many of them and their brothers are close, but there's so many of them got into fist fights and all sorts of stuff. Like I hear crazy. I'm like, compared to other stories I've heard, I'm like, actually, David and I were pretty mild. Like we got along pretty well, except for that one situation.
I think a lot of it had to do with a lot of the shit that we went through too. Like we were in the trenches together,
right?
And then we came out of it, and then I mean, yeah, we were at odds for a time, but when you eventually realize that, you know, okay, we were at odds, but we went through all this together,
right?
What are we going to let define us,
right? And then it's like, okay, and then like I said, for me, I had to realize that it was a big it was a big understanding of simply what happens psychologically with trauma. And when you do the studies, when you look at it, I'm a big fan of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson. And when he talks about it too, it changes your brain. Like trauma changes your brain.
It changes who you are as a person.
Like literally, like they do like brain studies, and your brain is different. It even develops differently. Children who experience trauma at young ages actually have literal brain damage that's done to them. It's insane. And so when you're like, oh my gosh, that's that. You know, you start realizing that I'm emulating behaviors. I'm and then that's where a lot of people, and this is where things go wrong, where a lot of people, they start emulating behaviors. And there's really only one of three ways you can go. You can become complacent and just go, whatever it is, what it is, and just stop trying toward anything. You can become the very thing that you hate.
Yeah.
Or, which you and I both were emulating that a little bit to one degree or other. And then, or you can do something about it.
Yeah.
You know, and the way I looked at it was, okay, if dad has been through all this abuse, you've been through all this abuse, we've all been through abuse. And then it's like, you look back in the family chain, you just find more and more of it. Who's going to be the chain breaker? Well, the cycle stops with me, you know, and that was a thing I had to have. I was like, okay, well, cycle stops with me. So I started my life all over again, essentially in my mind. Like I tell Callie regularly that I feel like my life didn't really truly normally fully start until she was in my life. And that was my reset button where I'm like, all right, from here on out, things are different. And it was one of the healthiest things for me, but it also meant like a lot of soul searching, because then you had to redefine who you are. Not everything was a fight. And that was one of my biggest problems. Something would happen, and I'm like instantly want to go into fight mode. And then sometimes it was like,
whoa, man.
Yeah.
Why are you acting like that?
Right. And people just be like, dude, chill.
Yeah.
And so I had to start asking myself when situations would come up. I remember there was plenty of times I sat up late contemplating a situation I was in. How do I want to handle this? What's the right way to handle this? And, you know, and maybe a lot of people have done that, but it's one of those, like, when you were always having, because for us it was always impulsive. We had to act now. You don't have time to think. You have to think and act now on an impulse. Otherwise, it could change everything. You know, things could really go poorly in our home if you don't. So you had to become reactive. So then I was trying to become proactive after this. Like, how do I want to handle all these situations? So then I started, and that's, I guess, where my faith in Christianity and everything really started changing and molding, because I had to start re-inspecting everything we were taught. Because my thing was like, if Christianity is not true, it's trash, and I don't want to follow it. That was my thing, right? Like, I don't want to believe it. Like, I don't want to believe something that's wrong, or at least something I'm not justified in thinking is right.
So do you remember the exact moment when you had that thought? You're like, okay, if it's not something that is true and I don't want to follow it, do you remember the exact thought or the exact thing that you read or studied that made you think otherwise?
It wasn't really a singular thing. It was multiple. So what happened was I was at Bible college, and I was, you know, because I wanted to be a pastor. And Callie and I, my wife and I, we ran into this huge situation at the school, because school's crazy. And
what school was it?
Crown College of the Bible in Powell, Tennessee. At me, Clarence Sexton. Hi, Dr. Evans.
He's come at you before, right?
We came after him, but no, I'm definitely still talked about on campus. Like, I'm literally he who will not be named. I'm like Voldemort on campus. I'm not even kidding. So I went to,
you're the bearded, like, heathen, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, it was one of the funniest things, actually. I went at Andrew's wedding, my best friend, Andrew, he's from, Northern Ireland. He's got the accent and everything. And,
I love Andrew.
Andrew's awesome.
He should do this podcast.
Actually, what Andrew was at church this morning with me, and he goes, "You're going to your brother's side?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Come on, let me come with you." And I was like, "We're gonna have to do that. We'll have to do that. It'll be.
We
fun.
will have to do that, dude. That'd be so much fun.
Oh, he's hilarious.
Can you imagine having him drunk on the podcast?
Oh, it'd be so.
We could even do it on yours. I don't care. That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
He's actually yours is better for 3 people than mine. So
okay.
But Andrew, we as at his wedding, and there was a guy there that was one of the groomsmen, or was he not sure? It doesn't matter. And he goes, and I'm there, and I'm like, oh hey, yeah, so you must be so and so. Andrew told me about you. He's like, yeah. He's like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Will. And he goes, you are Will Hess? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, so I heard about you. I'm like, oh, what have you heard? And so, because if anyone knows, Bible colleges can be very strict. Not all of them, but I went to a Baptist one.
Explain how strict, because a lot of my listener base probably doesn't understand.
Oh boy. So okay, girls had to go everywhere in 3s, lest they be raped or meet up with a boy and have sex. You could not hold the hand of a girl, for example. You could not kiss a girl or hug a girl.
And there was like limitations on campus, right?
Yep.
Like men could go.
Yeah. Well, men and women were allowed in certain parts. There are certain parts that were not co-ed at all. There was also like dress code. Like I had to go to class every single day with an iron shirt and a tie. And days where there was chapel, I had to wear a jacket.
Didn't you get in trouble for having your head bald?
Yeah. I shaved my head. It was an accident. It's a whole thing where I was trying to trim my ears and it went badly, and I just was like, screw it, I'm just taking it all off. And then I got in trouble because apparently we weren't allowed to have buzz cuts. We had to.
Why not? They
think it's worldly, apparently. So I guess if you're bald, you're screwed.
Why? Is it associated with like biker gangs or what?
I have no dude. Half their rules I couldn't make sense of. Okay, I was like, but I was told that these were the good schools and all other schools were horrible, liberal, evil schools, and which is funny because actually all those schools like Liberty University, I'm like, they're a conservative school, dude. Like they're not liberal at all. And actually some of the top New Testament scholars and people are there. Like, what are you talking about? But anyway, that's what happens when you're raised in propaganda. Okay, look, guys, they did not educate us well. So what ended up happening was, so what happens is me and Callie got in trouble for, off-campus dating alone. And of course, if you meet with a girl at Starbucks, you're clearly having sex with her on the table. That was kind of their idea of it all. So, and they called like her very strict parents, and they put me basically at odds with my future in-laws because they were like, oh my gosh, Will's like, because they painted me as, they literally told her parents that, well, she's been hanging out with this rebellious kid at school, and we can, quote, no longer guarantee your daughter's purity, meaning her virginity. And it's like, I didn't realize that was the school's thing to guarantee. Like, if you send your kids here, we keep their V cards. Like,
yeah, turn them in. Put them in the basket.
Like,
we'll pass them back to you at the end of the semester.
Right. And I'm like, how does that even work? So it was this whole thing where I was trying to figure it out. And so what happened is I was fed up. I was honestly fed up because I was like, you know what? My church is nothing but hypocrites, right? We're being abused. And all of us are abused and put down, and the church just turns a blind eye. But then you and I show up to church and they know we're being abused. And oh my gosh, you make one smart comment and, well, David's a rebellious teenager. Oh, William's a rebellious teenager. And we just had this bad label on us amongst our peers because we were also homeschooled. Yeah. So we weren't, our only peers were church kids. And we had this horrible label on us. So it's like, okay, so my friends back then basically all betrayed me. The leadership didn't care about me. And, yeah, I need that. Yeah, you're good. And, and then I go to Bible college and they're just as crazy. And I was like, you know what? Christians are just stupid and insane. And I don't want to be one if it's wrong. So what ends up happening is I kind of have like this big introspection where I start looking into things that they taught me. I started realizing a lot of the framework they taught us, like music and even swear words, like all this stuff is not even biblical. None of it. Yeah. Drinking. Like it's like Jesus turns water into wine and we're like, nah, that's gotta be grape juice. Whenever the Bible says wine and it's good, it's grape juice. Whenever it says wine and it's bad, it's alcohol. Okay. I'm like, I don't know how you square that circle, but okay.
Where did that change? Like
in history?
Yeah.
Oh, it was during the teetotaler movement, like where like they made it illegal to drink in America. Yeah, and that all the fundamentalists got on board with it because alcoholism was rampant. Yeah, and so the church is like, yeah, alcohol is bad. There's all these alcoholic fathers. It's bad. So they threw the whole baby out with the bathwater instead of going like, maybe your self-control is a problem.
Wow. So they literally changed the way they teach the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa. Yeah. This is weird. I'm not used to being with somebody who has such similar mannerisms with me. And so what ends up happening is I start inspecting. I just start going through everything. And one of the biggest, so I started going through like, all right, what are good reasons to believe in God? Because the way I look at it is this: if you don't have good reasons to believe in God, you definitely don't have good reasons to be a Christian. That's why I was looking at it. So I started like going around on atheist channels, reading atheists. What do atheists have to say?
And you're going through this with an open mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. I didn't want to give up my Christianity because I hate being wrong, but at the same time, I was like, dude, I'm going to just do what's right. And so one of the arguments, for example, that came to mind was C.S. Lewis actually brings it up, and it's a very popular argument for God. So it is the moral argument, which is if God doesn't exist, no absolute morals or duties exist. But if God does exist, absolute moral values and duties do exist. And some people might be like, what do you mean by that? Well, think about it. If you're a space accident, we're just an accident. This all just happened on its own, right? Well, then there's really no ultimate meaning to anything, right? It is just, you're a space accident. Congratulations. You live, your neurons fire for about 75 years. They stop firing, you die. It's the end. There's no ultimate meaning. But also there's no ultimate meaning. There's no ultimate morality. So that means, when a chimp kills another chimp, you don't go, chimps are horrendous murderers, right? You don't do that. You just go, well, nature sucks. Really glad it didn't kill me. Yeah. When there's shark attacks, you don't go, wow, sharks are ravenous murderers. No, you go, that's an animal acting upon animal instinct. So what makes humans different? Well, we're more cognizant. We have more, we have moral framework. We actually create order. We have language. We have culture and values. Well, most cultures believe murder's wrong. Well, why is murder wrong? Well,
what cultures don't?
Well, I mean, there's the Aztecs who didn't mind a child sacrifice once in a while. But still, for the most part, like even in Aztecs, if you kill somebody in cold blood, there'd probably be repercussions. So I started realizing it's like, well, if God does exist, that means absolute moral values exist. And this is actually, as an abuse survivor, as yourself too, that was a big deal to me. Because like, well, that means all those things never would have happened. That happened to me would have just didn't matter, right? There's no ultimate meaning to them. There's no ultimate judgment for them. There's no right or wrong to them. It's just, well, that parent happened to be more quote unquote harsh, but then how do you even measure harsh? Because that could just be him just being mom, dad being strong parenting. Who cares? Because there's no ultimate meaning. There's no ultimate morality. So, but if God does exist, then we have access to a higher morality, something that's transcendent, kind of like a pyramid, right? We're aiming toward the top. That's why the word sin means to miss the mark, because there's perfection here and you're continually missing it. So it was like, oh, well, that makes sense to me. So I was like, that's a powerful argument for God's existence, right? Like meaning and morality. How do I have a frame of reference on what is moral, what is not? Because I know parents should love their children. Well, some parents don't. Well, are they wrong for it? Well, if you say yes, then you have to have a standard, something to measure to say that is wrong. If there is nothing to measure it by besides your feelings, then who cares? Nobody cares about your subjective feelings. Some people prefer ice cream over cake.
Yeah. And some people think that harsh parenting is harsh. Like, I don't know. Redundant. Some people think that parenting a certain way can be harsh, whereas others don't.
Right.
Don't see it that way.
Some people think like spanking your child is harmless. Other people think if you spank your kid, you're a horrible abuser.
Right.
Well, then who's right? Who's wrong? How do you measure that?
Right. I feel like you need another drink.
I probably do need that. I'm doing all the talking here. So sorry, that's
your story.
I know. So is this a pop corp or corp? Aha. Yeah. So then what ends up happening is I go through that, and then of course there's also what they call the Kalam cosmological argument, which is essentially the idea of everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Well, the universe we know has evidence that it began, which is when time, space, and matter began. Well, whatever caused time, space, and matter must be outside of time, space, and matter. The only thing that fits that definition is God. Everything is very well designed. Well, you have all sorts of technology in here. It's all very designed. Well, our bodies have like a digestive tract, for example. Look how designed that is. Oh, well, the human body is more complicated than our most complicated rockets. Well, if that's the case, then we have to go, well, where did the design come from? So I started going, okay, that makes sense. Okay, so I think that there's strong reasons at least to be justified in someone believing in God.
Yeah.
So then it came to Christianity. Well, Christianity really rises and falls on whether or not Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Like, if he rose from the dead, Christianity's probably pretty true. If he didn't, well, he's just dead.
How long did it take you to come to this realization? How long was this study, this deep search into your beliefs?
Well, it's still ongoing.
Obviously,
yes,
but when did you
but-
come to terms that okay, this seems like the right path to the right thing to believe?
I think it took a number of years. I was one of those I was like, I'm a believer, but my faith is small right now. You know what I mean? But then as I grew and came to understanding more and more, it probably took a course over, because it was when me and Callie were first married. I think it took me about 2 years of like continual study to be really firm and like, no, I believe this happened, because there's a lot of evidence for Christ's resurrection as well.
That's one thing I really appreciate about you. Do you want the lighter?
Yeah, I need
All right,
it.
there you go.
Thanks.
For some reason, this is getting choppy. All right, so we're rolling again. We're back, and it's still choppy. So hopefully, it just kind of kicks back in.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll just add a disclaimer. Sorry for the chop.
Sorry for the choppiness, folks. However, if you're listening, it shouldn't be choppy that way.
Right. So the audio stream is good.
The audio stream is good.
So what ends up? So yeah, I went through all this. I really studied for a while. Then I got into a full pastorate and everything, and it was just one of those, because I think evidence matters in a lot of things. Like, you have to have good justified belief for stuff. Like, a lot of people believe stuff blindly, and I get it. Some people have personal experiences with God, and I don't want to minimize those. But at the same time, if somebody asks you why you believe and what you believe at all, right? Like, even, okay, let's take this. I mean, politics, economy, whatever. Do you have good reasons to believe why things should be done? And have you studied it out? Because certain ideas sound good on paper, but they don't hold up once you actually apply it. So it's one of those things where I'm continually studying. I'm actually hoping to pursue my PhD in philosophy or theology, because that's my passion. That's something I love.
What kind of things do you study? I mean, obviously you study theology, you study the Bible, but you can only study the Bible so much without really having a broad understanding of what the Bible is actually saying.
Right.
So I know that that's one thing that you've done a deep dive into.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, sorry, I'm gonna adjust this camera. All right, yeah, we're good now. It was cutting off the top of your head.
Oh, gotcha.
But that's one thing that you've always done is you don't just study the Bible. Most people just read the Bible and they might read the little definition section of the Bible.
Right.
But you've done deep dives.
Right.
Deep dives.
Yes.
Like deep dives. To repeat that, deep dives.
Because it's weird. I tell people this all the time. People think it's like all this, like these stuffy theologians in ivory towers and just contemplating everything. And really, it's a deep well, but it's actually fun. Like, in a lot of people are like, how is that fun? Like, when you get into it, when you get into worldview discussions, it's actually fascinating, which is probably why I'm engaged on it so much, because I find it so fun. Which is also why I encourage people mental toughness. It's okay to be challenged. I'm okay with being challenged all the time. Like, I regularly, hey, at the end of our episodes, do you agree or disagree? Let us know what you think down below, and we'll try to engage with you.
You're not trying to live in like an echo chamber of this is what I believe and this is how I believe and I'm not changing it. However, I'm open to discussion.
Right. Well, that's actually my opening statement. I'm like, hi, my name is Will, with the church split.
Yeah, you need a different intro, by the way.
Why?
Because I feel like the people that listen to you know you.
Oh, well, yeah, well.
I feel like you should open it up a different way.
I probably should get more creative, but
do it a different way.
Fine, I'll figure it out. We have this
not that I'm a professional,
right?
I'm just saying.
But I always say, in my I have a little thing I say that tells people kind of like what we do in a sentence, which is we help you escape your church's echo chamber, learn to think biblically, and of course challenge the status quo. And it's one of those things where, I get called heretics by Christians all the time. Like, hey, he's a heretic. He believes X, Y, and Z. He's a heretic. And it's like, well, no, it's just...
It's kind of funny that people... Because, you can kind of associate it to, political parties, right?
Uh-huh.
If you don't agree along this line of thoughts, then you're not a part of us. But it's kind of funny that people from a biblical perspective will attack somebody who's also from a biblical perspective.
For sure. I'm not going to lie.
He's a heretic.
I'm very careful on saying the word heretic on the program, because heretic is usually a cancel word. Yeah. Right? It's a word that we say that you shouldn't listen to them because he's a heretic. Mark those that cause divisions and avoid them.
Yeah.
So once you throw the heretic bomb, people go, we shouldn't listen to them at all. Yeah. False teachers. We can't talk. They'll watch out for the wolves.
It's a whole way to diminish a whole movement.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just label somebody with something offensive and just run away.
Yeah.
That's applicable, like I said, in politics. Actually, when you said everyone fighting and attacking each other because of small differences, let's talk. If we're going to mention politics, let's joke around about the Libertarian Party for 2 seconds.
Okay.
The Libertarian Party is, I agree with a lot of libertarian principles, right? You know, the law of non-aggression and let everyone do what they want to do in their own homes. Who cares? You are not the king of their castle. You live your way, they live theirs, and you guys can be passionate about what you guys disagree on, but in the end, you are free to do that which you will, as long as you don't hurt somebody else or infringe on someone else's rights or liberties, right?
Right.
So, with that being said, the Libertarian Party is always fighting each other on how to apply some of these. Like, they're all like, it's so funny because I even got involved in some political movements and stuff over in Grand Rapids, and I quickly got out because I'm like, man, y'all a bunch of catty, dramatic little turds. Like, you guys can't get past any of this. Like, they're a bunch of little sissies. It kills me because they're all too distracted by arguing with stupid stuff and not a. I don't know.
That's one thing I realized too with going back to the political parties is the fact that whenever. Like, for instance, I interviewed Ryan Kelly on this podcast.
Right.
And Ryan Kelly, he's actually from the Grand Rapids area.
Yep.
However, he was part of the January 6th controversy. Whether he was there or not, I don't fucking know. But people were attacking me because they're like, why would you platform him? Why would you put him on your podcast? Why would you give him a place to talk? And it's like, okay, well, he could easily be our governor. Very easily.
For sure.
And why can't I have a discussion with him?
Right. Well, and it goes into like it's that law of non-association. You can't associate with him.
You can't associate with him.
Yeah.
He's an evil person. He's a terrorist.
Yeah. It's, and it's all that stupid stuff where it's like the same thing happens. I mean, I'm friends with
I'm getting canceled for this, by the way.
Various different people. I mean, it's okay. Actually, to be canceled is a lot of fun.
Cheers to being canceled.
Oh, canceled.
Woo!
Yeah. All right. Holy dead air, Batman. All right, so suddenly quiet. So when it comes down to it, it came for me. It was this whole full circle, like now we can jokingly say literally a come to Jesus moment. And it was like, okay, no, this is real. This is true. And I have really, I think, good reasons to believe it. Now what I need to do is realize that I need to challenge Christians to do this more. And what's funny is I found this entire world of people that do this in Christianity, and it's not in mainstream. Do
you think they're shunned or that they're kind of swept under the rug?
I think it's more of it doesn't fit usually as mainstream. It's called, what they call is apologetics, which comes from the Greek word apologia, which means to defend the faith. So when when like Peter says, be ready to make a defense, he's saying, be ready to make an apologia for the hope that is within you. And so I got involved in the apologetics community and realized, dude, there's like Christopher Hitchens and Dr. William Lane Craig debated this with the existence of God ages ago. It's a really good debate. You should listen to it. It's like 2.5 hours, but it's a great time.
Send it to me.
I will. It's really great. Christopher Hitchens is a really good rhetorician. Like, he's really known for and he's the atheist, and he's very known for good, clear, cohesive thought. And he's very good orator. He's a good speaker.
That's one thing I really appreciate about people like that, or even like you, like listening to opposing views.
Right.
It's important. It's important for anything.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to politics. If you don't agree with someone, the best way to counteract them and to have a better argument is to fucking listen to them.
Right.
Literally.
Right. Well, you have to, because if you don't listen to them, you don't know what their argument is, so you don't know how to counter anything.
Exactly. And how do you make up your own decision from there in your own mind? Is that, okay, all right, that's what they believe. Okay, this is what I believe. How can I come to a mutual understanding?
Right. Well, and that's for me where it's like, okay, well, I need to hear my opposing viewpoints. I'm not afraid of opposing viewpoints because if I'm wrong, I go, thank you for showing me the truth. It doesn't mean I'm going to go down without swinging. I'm going to argue you to the floor because I want to see.
Because that's what you know.
Right. Well, right. But also I want to, if you can counter every single one of my points that I have to argue against you, now you actually have an argument because I go, you might have a point here because you actually were able to counter every single thing I said. Now that you countered everything I said, now I got to go home and think about it, right? I might not change my mind on the spot, but I have to hear the other side. If I don't, then all I'm doing is I'm ensuring more echo chambers. I'm ensuring more polarization, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, so our program, by the way, if anyone knows, I mean, if you can you're probably telling the temperature of the room already. We're sassy. I mean, we're there's a lot of sarcasm in the room, and we definitely have positions. It doesn't mean we're not willing to be challenged on those, though. In fact, it's actually funny. There's like positions I changed on the program throughout the period of time.
But that's cool and that's respectable because people can go back and see the way you thought about something previously and then be like, oh, okay, I see where he changed. I see how he changed his mind and what he studied in order to get to this point.
Right. And
And that's important. That's one thing that people don't talk about in mainstream is like how, because like once you're labeled something, then you're always that.
Yeah.
You're always that.
And I don't need to be that. I can be whatever I need, whatever I think is true. I'm going to change and be.
It's important.
Yeah, which means I have to. But what?
It's important as a human being.
Absolutely, and that's why everyone should practice it. You know what? If like, it's actually one of the things we joke around in the Christian community and the theology community. There's a group of people called Reformed or Calvinists. Anyone who knows me knows I'm not a Calvinist. I'm not Reformed. They have a whole thing. The long and short of it is that they believe that mankind is born evil, and they're so evil, their hearts are against God, and they can never choose God. They have no free will. And so God has to choose them. So he chooses some to salvation and some to damnation for his own glory.
That would suck if you wanted to be chose and you weren't chose.
Yeah, you're telling me. Clearly, I don't believe it's true. But it's funny because there's actually this running gag. One of their leading, I've actually had him on. One of their leading like voices is Dr. James White. Now, Dr. James White does great work in textual issues like the history of the Bible manuscript traditions and all that. But then when he gets to his theology, it's like these weird blinders come on and he just becomes like a robot and just says what John Calvin from back in the Reformation says. Now, but what's funny is I read his book called The Potter's Freedom. That's supposed to defend that position of God chooses us, some to salvation, some to damnation. And I read his book and he was arguing against Arminians, who are the people who believe, like from the Reformation or post-Reformation, really, that we have a free will and we can choose God. And so, if that's the case, then you would expect that there would be a ton of Arminians quoted, right? I mean, if you're going to rebut a position,
you would assume.
You would assume.
Yeah.
He quotes one. And I was reading this book. I was like, "What? Like, do you even read other?
Why was there only one?
Because apparently he thought he knew their position enough to where he didn't have to represent them.
Did you ask him about it?
No, because when we had him on his program, I hadn't read his book, and he told me if I read his book, he would come back on the program to talk about it.
You read his book, obviously.
I read his book.
Did he come back on?
No, because because me and my friend David Paulman, we did a review of the book afterwards because he's an Arminian.
Oh boy.
And he was like, "So what do you think of that book?" I'm like, "It's bad. This book is trash," which I was surprised because I was like, I mean, I'm not a big fan of James White and some of the way he behaves and acts, but I mean, I've known his books to at least be pretty decent, but this book is horrible. And he's like, "Want to do a review series on it?"
Oh boy.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's do a review series on it." So we did. And
how big is this guy?
Dr. White? Mm-hmm. He's a world-renowned theologian and apologist. Like he travels the world. Most people in the Christian community know his name.
So he's a part of the apologist movement.
Yeah, yeah.
Would it be a movement? Would it be right to say that?
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe a
group?
movement, maybe a group. Yeah. But he's not. He's part of. Okay, now.
But he's a Calvinist.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Calvinists can also be a part of that.
Yes, actually, there's quite a few of them. And
okay.
There's a lot of them actually.
Okay.
And there's one French dude, I'm not going to say his name because I always butcher it. Actually one of my favorite theologians in many ways, Chris Date, he's a Calvinist, much to my chagrin because he's right in so many areas. And then when it comes to the Calvinism, I'm like, one of these days, I'm praying for him. He'll get it. He's a really good sport about it though. So if you give him like crap for it, he'll laugh and he's a good.
And you've talked to him.
Yeah, we engage. So we get on this world-known program, and he starts responding to us, and he does multiple videos about us, and he's like, it's continual misrepresentation, and it's so bad and basically it just turns into mockery and then talking about how great he is. It's really funny. Boy. But anyway, so I get involved in this apologetics community, and so the difference is a lot of Calvinists adhere to what's called presuppositional apologetics. So in the apologetics community and how to defend the faith, there's like different approaches to how you do apologetics. So there's called presuppositionalism, like classical apologetics, and what's called evidentialism. Presuppositional apologetics is usually kind of, in a lot of ways, considered the worst by many people in the apologetics community.
Why so?
Well, I'm about to tell you. Their arguments they do what they call transcendental arguments, which is basically they will ask you by what standard. That question comes up a lot. And how do you know that's true? And their whole argument is continually presupposing, hence the name presuppositional, presupposing the existence of God. They don't think they have to argue it. They just have to show that you have no justification for your beliefs without God. So, for example, if you said to me, "Will, child abuse is wrong," I would go, "By what standard?" and you'd go, because it's wrong.
But hold on. Counter argument.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be subjective? Because some people think that spanking is considered child abuse.
So, well, that's where it kind of comes down to, where it's like, okay. And so somebody might be like, well, Will, didn't you just make
not that I want to say that spanking isn't child abuse,
right?
Depending on how it's coming. But what I'm saying is that even certain ways that you talk to a child can be considered child abuse,
right? And then there's different ranges within. So the problem is with presuppositional apologetics, like the moral argument's a good argument, but telling somebody continually, just how do you know that's true? What do you know by that?
Okay.
And then, oh, well, God is true. Well, God says this about you. It's that person. And if anyone wants to know what presuppositional apologetics is like, is that person that when you say, I don't believe that, and they just quote Bible verses to you, and they're like, well, because God's real, and you go, I like, if you're not a Christian, you go, I don't care what the Bible says.
That loses me when people say that.
Yeah, well, and why would you? If you're not a Christian,
it's like that with anything, though.
Right. So presuppositional apologetics, Van Til and Bonson, that's a whole joke. How maybe David Pullman watches this and he knows why I said that. But
shout out to David.
Shout out to David.
I like your name.
So it's actually very confusing when I ever go to text David. Both of you pop up to make sure I get the right one. So, but when it comes to that, like they continually presuppose God's existence, and then they only ask basic questions to try to show the person that they have no justification for their belief without the existence of God. Which there is a truth to the fact that you have no justification maybe for morality, like I said, without God. Otherwise, outside of yourself, right, you might have your own morality, but there's no true objective for all transcendental whatever. But that's part of what we call like the traditional arguments for God's existence anyway. You don't need to presuppose God, and you don't need to make the person try to, adhere to that. Because the whole point is if God is real, you should be able to prove some things about him. You should have good reason, right? So that presuppositional is trash. Classical apologetics is basically what I did when I came to really concrete knowledge, which is arguments for God's existence, arguments for Christianity. It's called classical for a reason. It's like, all right, these are the classic arguments. Then you get to evidentialism, which is purely evidence-based. And I'm an evidentialist, but I use a classical method, if that makes sense. So it's like, I believe evidence makes sense, but evidence is obviously what we need to base it on.
What?
Evidence like for what? Which part?
What part do you base evidence off of? Like, what do you mean evidence based?
Like, so if there's evidence, like, so if Jesus Christ.
How drunk are you?
I'm not drunk at all, actually.
No, not at all.
Dude, no. Like,
pour some more.
Dude, I'm German, bro. I gotta have half that bottle and finally feel a buzz. Evidence. Like, so for example, if Jesus Christ rose from the dead, we should have good evidence for such. And we do, because we see, for example, someone like Paul who hated Christians, killing Christians.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And then suddenly we see in the history and in various different writings of Paul turning his life around, going, no, Jesus is real. He revealed himself to me, blah, 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 blah. Then you go, well, this guy was killing people for their faith in Jesus. And now he's like, no, I'm one of them. You're like, what would cause a very dedicated person to completely change their life?
Yeah.
You have Jesus' family who thought he was absolutely insane. Like, they're like, Jesus is crazy. Like, that guy is nuts. He thinks he's Messiah. What a psychopath. And then turns around, and now then later on his brother ends up professing faith that he rose. So there's a lot of, and we can keep, there's a lot of things. There's a great book. There's quite a few great books, actually.
I was going to say, do you study anything other than the Bible when it comes to history like that?
Well, I have a weird obsession with the Bible, so I do study other history.
Yeah.
But most of it deals with church history and the first century and Judaism and ancient Israel.
Like what books do you read?
Well, there's a great book actually for like New Testament studies in general. It's a great overview by N.T. Wright and Bird called The New Testament in Its World. It's like that fat.
Jeez.
Yeah, it took me a while to get through it. That book is fantastic. There's also, like, by Dr. Lydia McGrew, Eye of the Beholder, also The Mirror and the Mask. There's a great book I'm reading right now, and I meant to bring it in so I could just be like, oh, you should check this out. It's called The Evidential Argument from Evil, and all it does is it talks about what we call the problem of evil, or the POE, which is, why is there evil and suffering in the world? So it's essays by atheists and Christians and theists all trying to round the circle of why is there suffering in the world. And it's a very technical book.
What's the point of it?
To see if someone has good reason to believe in God, even though evil exists. And so atheists, of course, in the book are saying, well, if there is all this evil and suffering in the world, there's probably a good reason that a perfectly good and omniscient God doesn't exist. And then you have Christians who are using evil in the book to show that God does exist, because maybe free will, or maybe there's maybe there's certain goods that couldn't have taken place without evil being possible.
I think that's important to know, because I think that a lot of good things come from struggle and from abuse and trauma. Like, it's not necessarily good. And this goes back to a whole victim's mentality, right? When you go through things, it's undeniable that you can, one, either become a better person from it, or you can let it define who you are for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. And no, and that's actually a big thing for me, where I'm like, okay, well, I look back at our suffering that we went through, and would I take any of that back? Well, did I enjoy it? No.
Do you think it made you a better person?
But absolutely made me a better person, and made me understand things on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Me and my friend Dan talk about this a lot, and he was like front lines, multiple tours in Iraq kind of guy, and I don't want to tell his story. You should get in touch with him.
I should. Hook me up.
But I mean, him and I talked about this. When you've stared actually in the face of evil, like you've seen evil. Now, a lot of people feel like certain people have had wonderful lives and they've seen very little evil, and they've seen like mild evil where, it's like, oh, that was wrong, but it's okay. Like it didn't. But when you face evil at its root, like you see it completely reveal its face, and you see how horrible and horrendous it is, it changes you. It changes you. It can help shape you,
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, are you going to learn from that? How can you shape that? So I think honestly, this is what we call a soul building theodicy. Theodicy is like a theological way of maybe defending something, of like a theological belief, a theological response to a problem, theodicy. And it's what we call a soul building theodicy, which is without evil and suffering, you wouldn't be able to build yourself up. That's the whole order into chaos. In fact, Genesis 1 talks about that. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and the Spirit was over the face of the deep. This idea of deep and the void, things like this in Hebrew actually have a very negative connotation, almost like a chaos. And God then says, let there be light, and he starts bringing order into the chaos. And it's a deep and profound thought when you think about it. When you have nothing but chaos in your life, speaking now metaphorically, order into it. Like, how do I bring order into my chaotic life? I have nothing but chaos. Well, now I have to bring order to it. Well, now that you've done that, you've seen the chaos and how horrible it is. Now you have to have that chaos under control, which also goes into even being a fighter. You and I both were fighters back in the day, especially. But now when chaos happens in your home, you have no problem. If somebody were to threaten your family, you would instantly turn on I know how to fight, and I know how to face chaos. I'm not scared of it anymore. Or at least I'm scared, but I'm able to be courageous enough to overcome it.
You had the experience.
Right. And would that be possible if you didn't suffer?
Right.
If you didn't confront it ever?
That's one thing I noticed with today's young people, is that the thing is like a lot of the things that we went through, I don't wish upon anybody.
Same.
I would never wish it upon anybody. But the thing is it's provided me to be a better person. It's caused me to have the experience to where, like you said, if something were to happen, I know how to kind of navigate through traumatic experiences.
Right.
Whereas like a lot of young people today fold instantaneously.
Absolutely.
They just give up.
They give up. They quit.
And it's sad for me because I'm like, they barely experience anything. Like they don't, like that's the worst thing that's happened to them, and they're giving up.
Well, they have and that's why I think also there's depression rates and anxiety rates through the roof anymore.
Suicide even.
Right.
Because like I couldn't even imagine like committing suicide. I mean, one thing I learned, you shouldn't say committed, but by being suicidal, like I that's nothing I would have even thought about.
Right. Well, and
I always thought about like what would my life be once I'm out of this situation.
Right. How like you had that glimmer of hope. You had to. That's what kept you going.
Right.
And when you have that, and I think there's a lot of things that run into it. First off, social media has not been helpful.
Not
in
at
a lot
all.
of ways.
I couldn't even imagine if social media was a thing. I mean, it was a thing when we were younger, but
MySpace. Call back.
Oh my
I had
God.
such a good playlist.
I was interviewing a comedian the other day, and he's actually a kind of a big comedian here in Michigan, but we were talking about MySpace, and it was kind of a throwback.
Yeah.
Like thinking about like who were your top was it top 8 or something?
Yeah.
Top 8 friends.
Yes, and that was a big thing.
It was a huge thing.
Yeah, like I remember distinctly, I was dating a girl in high school, and she's like, "Why am I not your number one friend? Why is David your number one?" I'm like, "This is my ride or die, lady. You don't get to dethrone my brother."
Like, could you imagine doing that today? Having a top friend? Oh my gosh.
Oh my word, yeah, that'd be horrible.
My gosh.
Everyone, it could create more complexes with people.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's this whole. So social media has not been helpful. I also think that if I can go back into like a little bit of the theological realm, I think it's also not been helpful when we say like, or you keep telling kids, "Hey, you're nothing but a space accident." You know, nobody cares about you. There's no ultimate meaning to anything. When kids are buying this, because we're seeing also, sorry for any of your listeners who might be atheists, but my personal opinion is like, well, when you are told that you have no meaning to your life, essentially, right? You're just a space accident. Who cares? Well, that's not fun for little egos either. And so you have that. You have social media. You have people who are more social than ever before. Like they are more in contact with the world than ever before, yet feel more alone than ever. And it's this. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't wish what we went through with anybody, but I see a lot of people folding more and more now. They can't handle the pressure.
Yeah.
In fact, I was told the other day, because I work in a very stressful field, and it's been very high pressure for me as I've learned this new career over the past year and a half ish. And which is why I feel like I haven't seen anybody, because it's like I've been focused on that career, trying to master it. And I was actually a really great compliment from my boss the other day. He looked at me and he goes, "Hey, by the way, we put a lot of pressure on you." And, you know, he's like, we knew it was going to be kind of a sink or swim. And I'm really proud of you. You swam. He's like, I know a lot of people would have broke under the pressure we put on you. And it felt good. I was like, yeah, but then again, as I think to myself, I've been through too much crap to quit now. Like I've come too far to only come this far.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot of this kind of, you know, to kind of like to tie the bow, just comes down to we've all been through crap, man. Like I wouldn't wish what I've been through on anybody, but at the same time, I don't think I'd change a lot of the things I went through, because they made me who I am. They made me stronger. They made me better. And they also gave me a different way to look at people. Because sometimes when somebody's having just a really bad day, like if I meet somebody and they're really crappy, part of me is like, gosh, what a jerk. Like I don't like you. But then part of me also goes, I don't know what that person's story is. You know, I don't know what that person's gone through. Maybe instead of judgment, maybe I should try to give them compassion. And I'm not always perfect on that, because I do tend to be critical and cynical. I think that's my nature. As I was told by one congregant when I was a lead pastor, they're like, "Will, I think you're the most cynical person I know." And I'm like, "Oh, so what some people call cynicism, I call discernment." Because, you know, I'm always continually questioning.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of just because of what I went through. I realized that there was a lot of lies, and I believed lies. And if you realize that you've been following lies for years, it's humbling and frustrating. You feel lied to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, so when you go through the extreme religious stuff we went through, it's like you realize that so much of that is lies.
Yeah.
So you have to have a hard time with resentment, right? And you have to kind of confront that a little bit.
Did you confront it with some of the people that maybe you thought lied to you?
Not really. Not much. Not many.
Have you ever thought about it?
Oh, yeah. I've thought about it. Have you ever thought about it? Did you do it? I did confront some people, and that was just when they confronted me on things. They weren't ready for that conversation. So, I mean, on and on this could go. But, you know, then when I pastored, I was a lead pastor for about 5 years, and that really changed a lot of things. Hence, that's when the church split was born, was because I realized that, my gosh, the church is broken in America. Which is funny, because I hear churches in Africa and China, where it's illegal, and it's like they're thriving. Right. And I'm like, well, and over here, it's like we have it better than everybody else, yet we suck.
I think about it like in the same terms as I think about politics, or I think about social issues, where people tend to resort to some of the things that, like, they tend to take things to more extremes whenever they have things easy. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I kind of think about it in the same aspect.
Absolutely.
With religion.
Oh,
like in like China or Russia or Korea, wherever it is, people are just happy that they can get together and just worship God. And they're happy that they can get together with people who are like-minded.
Right.
Whereas like in the United States, we got to kind of create issues.
Right. Well, actually, it's really funny, because I heard from a missionary in China, and he was telling me that He's like, well, you know how we argue about the book of Revelation? Like, how do we interpret it? Are you a preacher, rapture? Do you believe in the rapture? Are you what we call an amillennialist? Are you a preterist? There's always different ists because theology is isms and ists all the time. And he's like, well, but what gives our Christians hope over there is that book, they don't care about all that. They care about, in the end, it looks like we win and we're okay and we're in the loving hands of God. And I was like, that was kind of a reality check for me a little bit, where I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be as nasty even about my beliefs, right? Like, and there's certain things I do think there are certain beliefs that are detrimental in the Christian world, and I will be highly critical of those, but it doesn't mean I hate the people, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's we should mention that. Separating beliefs and ideas from people, right? Like, those are distinct, and people don't think about it that way anymore. They don't. Like, they literally, like, nowadays they have this weird, if you believe that, you're a bigot. If you believe that, you're a racist. If you believe that, you are a conspiracy theorist.
Well, it's a one idea fits all scenario.
And label the entire person. Or if you do that, you're a complete and total psychotic leftist, right? As opposed to, well, some people might have they might be wrong in an area, but they might be right in an area. And so we have to learn how to separate beliefs from people. So when I criticize beliefs, that's what I do. I criticize a belief system. I would criticize an idea. I try to, like, on our podcast, for example, we always try to call out what's called ad hominem. So it's a fallacy. It's a logical fallacy. Argumentum ad hominem. Like, and what it is attacking the person or the character rather than the argument itself. Like, instead, let the person's ideas stand on their own, and then try to keep the person intact. Yeah. It's still a human being, for crying out loud. And again,
because it's an idea, it's not the person
necessarily. And if the idea is a bad idea, show that the idea is a bad idea, and then go, this is why it's wrong, and I think you should think something better.
Right.
And then if you disagree, we can have that conversation. My favorite conversations are usually when I disagree with somebody. And it's not because I want to...
I feel like you would love those kind of conversations.
I thrive on them. Well, like, I took out one kid who was an atheist. We went out to lunch, and we just had but it was a really good conversation. And, it was just one of those, we went back and forth on various issues, and it was fascinating. And we walked away, hey man, we should do this again sometime. And it was just fun. Yeah. And it doesn't, having conversations, it doesn't. Well,
and I think that's the problem. A lot of people try to have these conversations with people they don't agree with because they want to change their mind.
Right.
And it's like, you don't need to change that person's mind. Maybe all you need to do is plant a little seed. Like, okay, why is that person so friendly? Why is that person so open-minded? Okay, I'm going to read some of the things they're reading.
Right.
And see why they think the way they do.
Right. And then, and then there's also this other issue, like, I don't want to say and the other thing to mention is, like, okay, ideas are not people, right? But then the other thing is, I think we should admit, though, that some ideas are better than others.
Absolutely.
That's a controversy nowadays.
Yeah.
We live in an age of what's called pluralism, which is essentially everything's true or nothing is true. Everything is permitted. All your ideas are equally valid. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're just not. Like, we look around certain cultures around the world, and I think most people in America would say it's wrong to, kill gay people, right? That's wrong. And, there's certain places where that happens. That's not okay. Is that idea just as valid as your? No, it's not as valid.
Right.
So now we need to talk about, why is that wrong, right? And of course, my argument is that we're all created in the image of God, and we're all equally valuable as human beings, and we shouldn't just be killing people.
Yeah.
I think we can see, like, Hitler's ideas were definitely not as good as other ideas. You get the idea.
Yeah.
It's just not all ideas are valid. Not all things are as good as the other. But it also doesn't help if all I do is attack people.
Yeah.
So that's why it's a big passion for me to, like, well, why do we believe what we believe? And it's in philosophy. I've become a bit more obsessed with it. Not as much as David Paulman, my friend I talked about. He's a big epistemology nerd, but epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. So basically, you spend your time thinking about thinking. But how do we come across knowledge, and how does that work? How does that interact with reality? It's really funny. But anyway.
So what do you see coming from the church split? What is in your guys' future? What do you think is going to be in the near future for you guys?
Well, I plan to we're just gonna. People keep asking me too, like, are you think you're done soon? I'm like, no, dude.
Why would you be done?
Why would I be done?
I'm just getting started.
Yes, like, dude. I didn't build that studio just for me to stop in a couple of years, man. No, I see us our future going into. I want more worldview discussions. I want to talk more with atheists than before, because we've mostly been focused on the church. We are called the Church Split, and our little slogan underneath is "Uniting a Divided Body." And I've been accused sometimes of being too inclusive. Like, Will, you're just so inclusive to any other Christians. Like, you got to hold a line somewhere, man. But then I get accused of other people being too divisive. So, and that when you're hearing from people, you're too divisive, and you hear other people saying you're too inclusive, that's probably a good indication that you're towing the middle line pretty well, right? Yeah. Because you're not without principles, but you're also not trying to make mountains out of the molehills,
right?
So, and I think if people could learn that in politics, even in your family life, like you probably know this, making mountains out of molehills in your family is not helpful.
No.
Right? There's probably things that Amanda does every single day that absolutely drives you crazy.
I don't know.
Okay. She probably has some tendencies that drive you crazy once in a while.
I mean, I think we get along pretty well.
Oh, dang. Well, okay. Well, there goes my example. Okay, your children. Children do things that drive you crazy.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Okay. But it's like just because that, doesn't necessarily negate everything else, right? So my whole thing is I hope to get more in worldview discussions. We're doing more interviews here in the near future. I have a few doctors coming on, like PhDs or PhD candidates that I'm going to be having on. But it's just this whole idea of I want to continue the conversation amongst Christians, especially, and worldview conversations in the future with atheists and agnostics and other belief systems. But I first wanted to really take the time and I still have ways to go on this, the Christian side. And I'll probably still dabble in and out of things because I don't have. If people are like, oh, so what's your structure? I'm like, structure. I go, that topic sounds fun. Let's do that. Much like yourself.
Yeah, I don't have any structure whatsoever.
Yeah, that's kind of what makes it fun.
At all.
Right.
No, that's what I wanted to do, though.
Right.
I just wanted to talk to people.
Right. Well, and it's helpful, and you learn that way.
Yeah.
And so, that's the future for, I think, the Church Split is just continuing. And we want to help people understand Christianity better. And if you're not a Christian, you can at least come and engage and hear me out. And, if you think what I say is garbage, that's cool. We'll have that conversation. We've had people on that, we actually had one girl on that she completely changed her life differently. She went from like a real progressive Christian, like a more leftist Christian, and she changed to be more Orthodox. And it was actually through continual emails with her back and forth. And she changed her mind on stuff. Now, whether you agree with her or disagree with her, you can't minimize her experience either on her. Like, well, I think this actually is true. Yeah. So that's a big thing for me. Is like, I just want to keep cultivating. I want to keep challenging the church to be better because we can be better. I think for too often the church probably just took what we had for granted. Like, oh, well, most everyone was Christian. Well, now we're seeing a shift in the culture of more and more people are not becoming that way. Well, now we have to ask why. Yeah, exactly. Like, why is that? So that's what I do. So I'm a notorious studier, but I think a lot of that also comes down to the fact that I think you and I didn't have a strong education, and I don't like not knowing things. And so I want to know things as best as possible, but also I'm never going to know everything. So I had to target my studies to a very niche thing, right?
Well, it's important. It's important.
Right. If
you don't know something, study up on it.
Right.
Especially if you're curious.
Absolutely. And then ask an expert, like ask a couple experts.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, like, of this podcast too, is like I've learned so much from talking to different people. Mm-hmm. Like, I've gotten an education essentially on so many different subjects. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, then you learn how like certain people think and stuff like that. And that's what's helped me too. Cause I've had people on I disagree with. I've had people on I did disagree with. I've actually basically had a debate on my program as well, where I had somebody on who said some crazy stuff, I thought, and so we like, battled it out.
Here we go.
Well, he was one of the IFB people. He thought alcohol was wrong. Women should only wear skirts, things like that. Geez. And so him and I went after it. It was a good time. I had a lot of fun with that one. I'm not sure if he did, but whatever. But point is, anyway, all this to say that, I think you can rise above your circumstances. And I do, and as a person, I do think that there's a God out there that loves you, and I think that if you hold on to that hope, if you're going through something, that can really be helpful. But honestly, at the end of it all, I mean, to circle back to our story together, we have been through it all. So you're telling people, right? Like, this literally is called Rising Above Podcast, Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what more of a slogan you need, that the goal is to rise above your circumstances,
Yeah.
and not to be consumed by them.
Yeah.
Because that I see that. I know people from back in the day that I see, and they're still mentally stuck.
Yeah.
And
Well, we see that in so many people. I've seen that in so many people I've gone to school with, where they've gone through situations, and to me, it's like, okay, that's barely a situation. Like the things that we went through, I feel like we should be we should be in drugs, and we should be in jail, in and out of jail. We should have kids by so many different women. Like we have the perfect story to to just be a victim,
right.
essentially.
Yep.
But there's people out there who have less that have happened to them, and they're engulfed by it.
Right.
And that's the whole purpose of the Rise and Above podcast, because you don't have to let that define you. You don't have to let that be who you are as a person.
Right. Well, and
You can change.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, okay, so if I did that, for example, Dad. Let's take Dad for example. Like you and I mentioned, like, hey, you know, he got complacent after a period of time. I mentioned that he was violent with me a few times, and if I wanted to just hang out and just keep Dad buried under what he did to me, I could, right? I could be like, oh, you're bitter, resentful, but also, Dad did the same. Dad went through the same thing with his parents, and actually, the thing he went through things with his parents. Yeah, he had a relationship with them. Well, that was kind of an example where I got to know Grandma and Grandpa, and I didn't think that they were like these horrible, evil people. Yeah, I know they did horrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
Well, then it's like, well, okay, if I keep them under that, because people, the lie is that, well, these people only perpetually keep doing it. Mm-hmm. That's all they'll ever do.
Yeah.
Once abuser, always an abuser, leader. And it's like, really? Like no one's ever changed.
You can choose to change.
Right. No, does that mean the probability is high?
Absolutely.
I mean,
it's easier. It's easier. If you're a victim of it, it's easier to do it.
Right. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So yeah, the probability rising above things like that is usually low.
Yeah, it's pretty.
A lot of people don't, because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's scary.
You have to actively make a choice. Okay, do I want to cheat? Do I want to ruin the situation that I have?
Right.
Or do I want to repeat the situation that I grew up? I want to be that person. It's harder to make that choice.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and also the scary part, and this is what I think I notice in study as well, and in my interactions with people, it comes down to people are scared to take the responsibility for their life. It comes down to responsibility, because at the end, you're responsible for you. People were crappy to you, they were horrible to you, but in the end, you're still responsible for you. So what are you going to do about it? Just only go, well, so-and-so did this to me. No wonder why this happened to me as a kid. I was molested. I was this. I was that. I was beaten. I was hated. I was neglected. Whatever. Everyone's sorry. And if you just say, that's why I'm screwed up, I just can't get past it. Well, now you're seeing it, and you're not taking responsibility for you. And the reality is, you better. You deserve better. If you think that was wrong to you, that happened to you, then you need to acknowledge that you deserve better. And then you need to make your life better. Do something about it. And that's why, I still engage people that I've wronged me. It's a big circle of everyone's been wrong, but you still do it. And it's a good thing. And it will see people grow. But I've noticed when people don't do it, right, they don't let someone grow, then it's weird, because if let's messed up, like say, what would in the end happen? Well, I'm over here living over fight. I got things going on with my wife and my child, and things are wonderful. But in the end,
it's hurting your life.
Yeah, it's hurting you.
Yeah, it's hurting my family. It's hurting my kids, and yeah.
It does.
The cycle repeats itself.
Exactly. It doesn't hurt me at all, because I'm over here living the high life, and you're over there all resentful.
Yeah.
And
the abuser is living fine. It doesn't bother them most of the time.
Exactly. And so it's like, okay, and then ask yourself, is those people that hurt you, are you gonna let them win?
Yeah.
Are you gonna win? Yeah. Well, I can tell you right now with how, because Mom was pretty repentant, right? Like Dad went through he went through like a self-discovery stage of repentance, which is the idea of like turning away from, right? He repented of the wrongs he did, but Mom never went through that and started to get sick, like her mentally, and really went downhill. And it's one of the things where it's like, well, it's hard to reconcile. I explained this to my wife. I hadn't talked to her for like 2 years. Finally, she like just so done. Like, fine, okay,
check.
Yeah, for 2 years, and I got with her. But then I got with her. That's when I called. I'm not sure for that. Yeah. You and I had like a 2-hour conversation. Dude, I noticed there was something wrong, and now I know there's definitely something. Now we know. So when all that went downhill, I was very quick at, I'm never gonna be able to make right. It was after 2 years. I sat down with dinner with her. And I'm teaching her on everything, and I want to see what's to say for herself, because if she's truly sorry and repentant, I will drive to have a relation, right? On a degree or other. Not like we're never going to be buddy, but
it's gonna be so bad.
Oh, again? So do you need to go take care of that?
We can wrap this up.
Okay,
soon.
So, so when it came to that with Mom, I was like, okay, I now need to I now will never be able to make it right that wrong because you have slipped so far. So it came into the question of how am I going to handle that? And I went back and forth on that. I remember. You remember that conversation? I was like, because for you, that's your adopted mom. You know, you and she abused you so miserably.
I had no skin in the game at that point.
Yeah, you're like, look, I never asked for this. I never asked for you. You have a good relationship with dad, and that's because, well, the man invested in you and cared about you, and there was repentance.
Yeah.
With mom, of course, it was crazy, but I'm her kid. Like I was raised by her,
right?
And so there's this weird and it's this weird obligation I have where I'm like, well, how much of an obligation am I going to have towards you since we can't make right this wrong? Because I was asking her, like, do you remember doing this? No. Do you remember this? A little bit. And I could tell she was lost in the conversation. Well, now it makes sense. She has early on stage dementia. And she even didn't know where she parked. She got lost in the parking lot. I had to help her find the car. It was really weird. But anyway, point is, all this to say that you can't hold everyone forever under what they've done. And you sometimes have to make best of your situation.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to, it's okay sometimes to go, I need to remove myself.
Yeah.
If you need to remove yourself, remove yourself. Sometimes that's the best thing that happens to you is removing yourself, letting you restructure your being, your person.
Yeah.
And then coming back and going, okay, got my issues worked out. We're good.
Yeah.
So anyway, point is all this. I don't want to be a negative Nancy because I don't want to make it a sob story. I want to make it this.
No, it's not. It's a story of rising above. I mean, you and I essentially share the same story, and we've both overcome the same situations. I mean, from different perspectives. Obviously, you were more the protector. I was the abused.
Yeah, you were the target, right?
I was the target, but we both were able to overcome the situation and essentially better our lives tremendously.
And it takes courage and it takes bravery and it takes responsibility because there was a point in time you went to therapy too.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, and you were like, I have to confront some things.
Yeah.
Because you realized that you were exemplifying some toxicity.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like necessarily the past. It was just things that happened like, you know, like through life.
Right.
And it was leading up to that point. It's like, okay, I need to do something. Because if I don't do something, then it's going to just end up badly. And it's going to more than likely resemble the way we grew up.
Right. And so, and for me, it was, like I said, it was after that moment with you and then moving onward and going into college. And then when college and the Christian world got crazy, and that was only extreme right fundamentalist authoritarianism that I was under. Okay. And I had to, I had that moment where I was like, all right, enough's enough. It's time to do something. I never saw a therapist though. Probably should because I'm pretty messed up, but it does help me where I have a big passion for things now. And now I joke around. I call my house Hotel Hess. I see because I have so many people that we've helped in our home. People escape cults. We've helped people escape from cults, and we got them resituated. I help teach a kid how to drive.
That's cool.
It's really cool because look at what we're able to do now that I have come through this.
Yeah.
You're helping people learn. Like I help people escape cult. You're helping people get relocated, and we've had failures too, dude. I took in a drug addict for a while, like trying to help him. He is out of jail. He's doing better, and then he relapsed and went right back in, and it was this really horrible thing where you're like, dang it, like why?
Yeah.
But then there's other times where you have where now my brother-in-law lives with us. He's 17. He's finishing his senior year with us, and he's gone through some stuff because his mom passed away when he was a young boy. He even says he doesn't really remember much before that she had cancer. Things like that where it's like, now I want to help him rise above his trauma.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you guys can use it. I'll end on this. You can either choose to be conquered by the things that oppress you, or you can choose to use it, weaponize it, and help others conquer their struggles. And I just encourage people to do that. It makes it, and it's so much more rewarding. So you'll be a healthier person. You'll be happy you did it. And if you're bored and you're interested in theology, Christianity, or anything like that, come check out the Church Split. We're a bunch of idiots, but we have a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. It was fun. Bad boys.
We ride together.
We die together.
Bad boys for life.